Chapter 155. The gold pocket watch wasn't big, but it should have some weight. Zheng Tan could feel it when he grabbed it. Seeing Chenja's nonchalant reaction, Zheng Tan felt that this pocket watch was like a very common everyday item. There was nothing to be cautious about. When Chenja held it, he didn't hold it tightly. If it was something precious, he definitely wouldn't be like this. Moreover, when he saw Zheng Tan throw the pocket watch on the table with his paw, he didn't check it anxiously. He didn't seem angry at all. However, after thinking about what Chenja said just now, Zheng Tan wasn't sure. Before this, Zheng Tan heard from Yi Hao that there might be a material in Chenja's hands that could defeat Lai Er. It could help Yi Hao eliminate a strong competitor in Chuhua City. Yi Hao also wanted to get that material, but when Zheng Tan eavesdropped on the video call between Lai Er and Chenja, he didn't hear any material. However, the word thing did appear. Moreover, this thing sounded very important to Lai Er. Lai Er also had some idea of what it was. Thing. Zheng Tan looked at the golden pocket watch beside her feet again. How could something that could make people betray their friends just be a daily item? Chenja saw the cat in front of him looking down at the thing at his feet. He thought that it was just curious, as if it was looking at a new toy, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, he continued, "Before the accident, my father told me that if I could escape, I should leave this place far away and start a new life. If I really couldn't live anymore, I could open it. However, I hate this thing. Every time I see it, I think that it was the betrayer's greed and evil intentions. As for life, it's fine as long as I can earn enough money to survive. There are so many shining people, so I don't need to join in the fun. This world is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Some people are high profile, while others are low-key." As he spoke, Chenja poked the cat's head with his finger. "This thing, just leave it here as you wish. Out of those people, whoever finds it first will get it. It's up to God. This is also a kind of opportunity, don't you think so? It's your grandpa." Zheng Tan tilted its head and avoided Chenja's fingers. It continued to study the special features of the local tycoon's gold pocket watch. What was troubling was that with Chenja watching, Zheng Tan didn't dare to do anything that was too unusual for ordinary cats, such as picking up the pocket watch and opening it. Chenja suddenly thought of something. He got up and walked to a cardboard box in the room that had not been sealed with tape. He opened the box and rummaged through it. Zheng Tan walked over to take a look. There were some pens, paper, boxes, notebooks, and folders in the box. Chenja took out a plastic pencil box from the cardboard box. The box was a little big and had 2 layers. The upper layer had colored pencils of different lengths, and the lower layer had ordinary pencils arranged neatly from B to H. These colored pencils of different lengths were given by a child in the neighborhood. Chenja had drawn for them once, so the child gave his old colored pencils to Chenja. The child felt that since he already had a few sets of new colored pencils, he didn't need the old pencils, so he might as well give them to this uncle who often gave candy and was good at drawing. Chenja randomly took a half-used pencil from last time. He opened the sketchbook and was about to draw. Before he started, a cat paw rested on the edge of the cardboard box. Chenja, whose attention was still on the cardboard box, stopped what he was doing. He followed the cat's gaze and found that the cat in front of him was looking at the colored pencils. Colored pencils? Chenja thought for a few seconds. He looked at the pen in his hand, put it back, and picked up another pencil. It was a cheap pen, and his drawing skills were far inferior to those who graduated from professional classes. But Zheng Tan felt that the drawing was still very good. At least he felt that Chenja didn't draw himself crookedly. This was also the first time in many years that Chenja had drawn colored pencils. Actually, colored pencils were not bad, right? After finishing the drawing, Chenja wrote down the date and other notes, and then looked at Zheng Tan. "Keep it as a memento. I don't like to take photos, so I drew you again. When I recall in the future, I will remember that I used to know a cat." Chenja carefully put the drawing into the folder, tidied up the cardboard box, and sat back on the chair. "I'm leaving tonight. Maybe I won't come back in the future." Leaving at night? In such a hurry? Did the investigation come? After staying at Chenja's place for another 10 minutes, Zheng Tan couldn't stay any longer. He had to go home. Chenja stood on the balcony and looked at the black cat who quickly ran away and disappeared. The next day, Zheng Tan was brought by Xiaogua to shoot a video for the promotion of the new product. Zheng Tan didn't have any free time until the evening. After dinner, Zheng Tan thought about it and decided to go out. Since last night, Zheng Tan's mind had been thinking about Chunjia and the rich gold pocket watch. After making up his mind, Zheng Tan stretched, jumped off the sofa, and prepared to go out. Black Charcoal, are you going out to play tonight? Jiao Ma, who was washing dishes at the kitchen door, looked over and asked. Zheng Tan looked at Jiao Ma and let out a soft, wah-woo sound. Zheng Tan still couldn't make the sound of a normal cat, but the Jiao family was used to Zheng Tan's uniqueness. Ow-woo, wah-woo and other similar sounds were common. Therefore, after hearing the wah-woo sound, Jiao Ma said, "Come back early." In fact, many people who had pets would communicate with them in their daily lives and talk to them in a normal tone. For example, if a family in the courtyard raised a Pekingese that wanted to poop or pee, it would jump with all its might to attract attention. Its family would untie its leash, bring it to the entrance of the building, unlock the door, and then say to it, "Go, come back when you're done." Then, the Pekingese would rush to the bushes and landscaping trees by itself. After it was done, it would paw the grass a few times to express its carefree and happy feeling. Then it would return to the building by itself, wagging its tail at its owner and asking for a reward. Every time Zheng Tan saw this scene, he would despise it. Asking for a reward for taking a poop? It was so stupid. After leaving Tsinghua University, Zheng Tan went straight to Chunjia's neighborhood. Standing downstairs, Zheng Tan saw that the lights in Chunjia's house were off. The door on the balcony was closed, but not locked. Zheng Tan jumped up and opened the door before the street lights came on. The house was empty, and there was no one in it. There were only simple furnishings and darkness. This was what Chunjia meant when he said, "Your suggestion," and so be it. Zheng Tan thought the pocket watch was an eyesore, so he threw it to the ground. He didn't expect Chunjia to misunderstand. Zheng Tan moved his ears to make sure there was no one in the house. He jumped on the table and saw the rich gold pocket watch on the desk. There was no computer, translation materials, books, and magazines on the desk. There wasn't even a teacup. This made the pocket watch even more conspicuous. Zheng Tan walked to the pocket watch and picked it up with his two front paws. Since no one was looking at him, he wasn't afraid of being discovered. The sky was dark, and the house was dark. Zheng Tan didn't dare to turn on the lights. Besides, he could see the house without turning on the lights. There was no need to take the risk of being discovered. Just as he thought, the pocket watch was a little heavy. It wasn't as light as it looked. Zheng Tan fumbled with the pocket watch for a while before opening it. When he opened it, Zheng Tan was worried that it might be a trap set by Chunjia. Although he didn't have that creepy feeling now, Zheng Tan was still a little nervous. It couldn't be helped. It was the after effect of being scared. After opening it, Zheng Tan realized that it wasn't a pocket watch. There was a dial on it, but there were no numbers. Moreover, there was only a pointer. When Zheng Tan held the pocket watch and looked left and right, the pointer moved along with it. A compass? It couldn't be. Weren't compasses double-headed? One was N, and the other was S? Besides, the pointer wasn't pointing to the south. Connecting it to the information he heard before, Zheng Tan guessed a lot of possibilities. The guess that made Zheng Tan the most excited was that there was a secret in the direction the pointer was pointing to. Was it the material Yi Hao mentioned, or was it something else? No matter what the pointer was pointing to, Zheng Tan didn't dare to act rashly. If this thing was really that important, as Zheng Tan guessed, this thing was too hot to handle. One's ability depended on how much burden one had to bear. The price of being overloaded was heavy. Zheng Tan did not want to end up like Chunjia's family. Furthermore, Zheng Tan was just a cat now. A cat that even the law would not speak for. Even the Jiao family he lived in were ordinary people. How could he compete with those people? Not to mention people like the third Master Feng and Yi Hao. Ordinary hooligans could also put the three members of a Jiao family in danger. Zheng Tan didn't want to think too much about conspiracy theories. However, after experiencing this incident, Zheng Tan knew that accidents weren't that difficult. But it seemed too wasteful to just leave this thing here. Chunjia didn't care. He had taken his revenge, and was looking for a peaceful life. But even if he didn't care, There were more people who cared. Zheng Tan's ears twitched. He heard movement at the door. It shouldn't be Chunjia at this time, right? If it wasn't Chunjia, then it was very likely to be those people who had been looking for this thing. It could be Yi Hao's men. Or it could be someone else. Zheng Tan gently buckled the thing on his paw and wrapped the chain around it. Then he took it and walked out of the balcony. Fortunately, he didn't close the balcony door when he came in. It was convenient to leave now, and there wouldn't be any sound of the door opening. Zheng Tan got out of the balcony and walked to the empty space above the parking lot. Fortunately, the angle here was better. The lights in the neighborhood couldn't shine here, and no one would notice a cat walking upright with something in its paws. Zheng Tan put the thing in his hand in the corner and squatted in front of it to block it. Then he pricked up his ears and listened to the movements in Chunjia's house. Someone must have entered the house. There was more than one person, and the person who came in didn't turn on the lights. After a while, Zheng Tan heard them cursing in a low voice. They were probably calling to report. Soon those people left. Zheng Tan walked to the edge of the empty space and looked down. 3 young people came out of the building. One of them cursed again in a low voice. This made Zheng Tan certain that they were the ones who entered Chunjia's house. After the 3 people drove away, Zheng Tan was about to turn around when he saw a person coming out of a car parked below. Because of the angle, he couldn't see the person's face, but Zheng Tan felt that this person was familiar. He should know him. When the person passed by here, he looked up at Chunjia's balcony. Then he seemed to feel something and looked at Zheng Tan, who was standing at the edge of the empty space near the balcony. Oh, it's someone I know. After seeing the person's face, Zheng Tan thought to himself. Chapter 156. There were many people in this world who were not afraid of snakes, but were afraid of frogs. This was very strange. They could play with colorful poisonous snakes without changing their expressions, but when they saw frogs without fangs or claws, they would unconsciously turn pale and break out in a cold sweat. Ranchi was similar to this kind of person. He could crush a person's head without blinking, and he could remain calm when facing a fierce dog, but when he saw a cat, he would unconsciously become stiff. In fact, Ranchi's situation was not as serious as it was now. Ever since Zheng Tan and the Monsignor appeared one after another, Ranchi's situation became more and more obvious. Of course, if he met other cats, Ranchi would at most be a little stiff. Only when he met Zheng Tan and the Monsignor would this person, who was usually calm, wise and brave, suddenly become a little listless. Ranchi came over with the 3 people today. He was originally going to the construction site for a routine visit to supervise and prove that his position as the person in charge of the project was not just for show. After visiting the construction site, he was ready to drive to another place to meet up with Yi Hao and report the results of today's inspection of the construction site. He did not expect to see a familiar person when he was waiting for the green light at the intersection. Ranchi had seen this person in the materials that Yi Hao had given him yesterday, but Yi Hao had let Leopard be in charge of the investigation there. Ranchi did not take over, nor did he take the initiative to contact him. This person was not very conspicuous among the people that appeared in the materials. Although it was just a quick glance, Ranchi was sure it was that person. Even Celestine had to acknowledge his observation skills in this area. It was also this observation skills that allowed Ranchi to recognize Zheng Tan at a glance when he saw him, and not treat him as a cat raised by another resident in the community. Ranchi was glad that he was driving a subordinate's car today. His car had been sent for maintenance, so he temporarily borrowed this very popular car for transportation. It was inconspicuous and easy to track. Before this, Ranchi was secretly happy that his luck was not bad today. The investigation on Leopard's side had not been going well. If he could find something today, it would definitely push the investigation forward. And now, Ranchi suddenly felt like vomiting blood. F***CK, didn't this cat live in Chuhua University? Why did he run so far away? How could a cat walk so far? Ranchi didn't know about other cats, but he knew that this cat would always appear in unexpected places, no matter how close or far it was from its home. The man and the cat stared at each other for half a minute. In the end, it was Ranchi who looked away. He didn't know whether he should continue his investigation or turn around and leave. If he continued his investigation, with this cat around, there were too many variables. It would not be good if he was discovered by others instead of investigating. But to turn around and leave now, Ranchi was quite unwilling. He had followed behind the three people. Although he didn't go upstairs, he knew that the three people should be moving around on the floor above the parking lot. And Ranchi didn't hear any knocking on the door, nor did he hear the owner open the door to speak. Ranchi didn't think that the three people lived here. So the biggest possibility was that the three people had broken the door. There was no quarrel, no fighting, most likely because there was no one in the house. And looking from the outside, at this time, there was only one house that didn't have the lights on. When the three people went downstairs, Ranchi quickly hid in the car. After the three people left, Ranchi planned to go to that house to take a look. But unfortunately, the cat he hated the most was squatting by that resident's balcony. Could it be guaranteed that when he was on the move, the cat would stay where it was and not disturb him? Could it be guaranteed that the cat wouldn't make any sounds to attract more attention and expose him? Could it be guaranteed that the cat wouldn't go into the house from the balcony and cause all kinds of trouble? No. Ranchi didn't have any guarantees at all. What the F***ck? Cats are the most annoying animals in the world. Ranchi thought. Ranchi scolded Jung Tan in his heart. Jung Tan was also hesitating. Before this, Jung Tan didn't decide who to give the hot potato in his hand to. He even wanted to hide this thing first and take it out later. But now that he saw Ranchi, he had to admit that it was just as Chunja said. When you can't make a decision, let them make the decision for you. The reason why Jung Tan hesitated was that he didn't know if Ranchi was reliable, or if he would silence him. If the person in front of him was the third Master Fong or Celestine, Jung Tan definitely wouldn't hesitate for so long. But now it was Ranchi, a guy who had an inexplicable prejudice against cats. While Jung Tan was hesitating, Ranchi had already made a decision. He was going to leave first and walk around, or stay in the car to take a nap. He would stay here tonight and observe. After the black cat left, he would act freely. So Ranchi looked at Jung Tan again and turned to leave. But before he could take 2 steps, a black shadow rushed over and stopped in front of him. When Jung Tan saw Ranchi like this, he thought that he was going to leave. He quickly jumped out of the car and stopped Ranchi. He hadn't made a decision yet, but he couldn't let Ranchi leave just like that. If he left, Jung Tan didn't know when he could get rid of the hot potato in his hand. Every second this thing stayed in his hand, Jung Tan felt a sense of crisis. He still had to go home tonight. Jung Tan wouldn't feel at ease if he couldn't give this thing away. Ranchi frowned. He moved his feet 45 degrees to the left and continued forward. The next moment, Jung Tan stopped in front of him again. Ranchi changed to the right. Jung Tan stopped him. Longqi turned around and walked back. Jung Tan continued to stop him. After going back and forth a few times, Ranchi was furious. He felt that this cat must be bored out of its wits, and wanted to find someone to play with. He was just unlucky to have run into it. What was worse was that he couldn't do anything to this cat. After all, Grandpa Tang VII and Yi Hao had spoken. If he really did something secretly, not only would Grandpa Tang VII and Yi Hao, but even Celestine and the third Master Fong would investigate thoroughly. Ranchi definitely couldn't fool them. Ranchi understood the complexity of people's hearts. So he didn't want to and didn't dare to do anything to this cat. Once he did, it would cause a chain reaction that he couldn't control. 2 years ago, if someone had told Ranchi that he would be forced into this state by a cat, he wouldn't have believed it even if you beat Ranchi to death. So Ranchi raised his hand and pointed at the black cat in front of him. Let me tell you, don't go too far. He was obviously trying to sound tough. Celestine had told them that this cat had to speak human language. If it sounded like an animal's voice, this cat would ignore it. Ranchi had said that he was waiting for the cat's reaction. Jung Tan's reaction was to look at it with even more disdain. Don't think that I can't see that look in your eyes. Ranchi wanted to vomit blood again. After a minute of confrontation, Ranchi walked into the car, took out his phone and made a call. Brother Ling, I've run into a situation here. Ranchi briefly explained what had just happened. He didn't mention what he was investigating, and Celestine didn't ask. Jung Tan saw that Ranchi went straight into the car and didn't chase after him. He wasn't that familiar with Ranchi, and he wouldn't jump into the car. Besides, Ranchi closed the car window tightly. When he opened the door, he was afraid that he would follow him in. Zheng Tan wouldn't rush to flirt with him. If Ranqi drove away directly, Zheng Tan would take it that Yi Hao didn't have this opportunity. However, Zheng Tan saw that Ranqi was making a call inside, and didn't look like he was going to leave. He quickly got out of the car and walked towards him. Zheng Tan was puzzled. He looked at the phone in Ranqi's hand again. It was indeed a phone, not a steel pipe. Because of the situation, Ranqi didn't turn on the speaker, so he put the phone on the empty space by the roadside and took a few steps back. Zheng Tan looked at Ranqi's phone. It was still in the middle of a call, so he walked over. Black Charcoal, are you there? A familiar voice came from the phone. Ha! Ranqi was calling Celestine. Was he complaining? Zheng Tan raised his head and looked at Ranqi with disdain. Tattletale. Ranqi was so angry that his stomach hurt from Zheng Tan's look. He knew that a lot of times, a cat's eyes could directly reflect their psychological activities, just like the situation in front of him. Cats were indeed evil creatures. Zheng Tan didn't care what Ranqi was thinking. He continued to listen to the phone. He felt that this was good. With Celestine there was more protection. At least Ranqi wouldn't swallow him up and kill him. The swinging tail hit the phone, making a soft sound. This was the answer to Celestine's question. Celestine laughed on the phone. Hurry up and go home. It's so late. Don't wander around outside. Also, you ran too far. Listening to Celestine's nagging, Zheng Tan became impatient again. He turned around and jumped onto the empty space above the parking space. When Ranqi saw Zheng Tan leave, he was happy. He thought that Celestine's persuasion was effective. He walked over and picked up the phone to thank Celestine. When he hung up the phone and looked up, Ranqi saw the black cat standing on the edge of the empty space. There was a chain by the black cat's feet. As for what kind of chain it was dark and the light from the street lamps wasn't very good. It couldn't illuminate that angle, so he couldn't see clearly. Zheng Tan threw the thing next to his paw down. Ranqi hurried over and caught it. He quickly looked around to make sure that no one was paying attention. He looked at the thing in his hand. When Zheng Tan threw the thing down, he had been paying attention to Ranqi's reaction. Seeing Ranqi's reaction, Zheng Tan was now sure that Yi Hao didn't find this thing. However, Zheng Tan didn't care whether he found it or not. He also didn't care when Zheng Tan found it. The hot potato was finally thrown out. Zheng Tan's heart was also relieved. He took a deep breath. His body and mind were at ease. It was better to throw it out. After giving the thing, Zheng Tan didn't want to stay here any longer. He jumped off the empty space and ran out of the neighborhood to Chuhua University, without looking at Ranqi. It was time to go home. Zheng Tan didn't care what Yi Hao would do next. If this thing was really as valuable as Chunja said, with Yi Hao's ability, he should be able to cope with the impact of this thing. Of course, if Yi Hao couldn't discover the value of this thing, then it could only be said that this was fate. Chapter 157. In Yi Hao's villa, Leopard reported to Yi Hao what he had found out in the past 2 days. They had found a lot of things, but they had not made much progress on the most important part. Leopard looked like he had not slept well for the past few days. Clearly, he had been busy all this time. Ever since Lai Er's mysterious death, his subordinates had begun to seize power and profit. They knew a little about what Lai Er was looking for, but they did not know what it was used for. Lai Er had never told them. However, this did not dampen their enthusiasm. They all had the same idea. Find it first, and they could not let the others beat them to it. If we can find this thing, we'll be able to find the answer if we keep digging. Something that can be valued by Lai Er and even classified as top secret must be very valuable. Whether in terms of information or material, Leopard said. It's not that easy to find this thing. Yi Hao had already decided to give up. Ever since he knew about Lai Er's mysterious death, he had lost interest in the so-called material in the rumors. Without Lai Er, everything was easy. After taking over a few factories, Yi Hao was a little short on money and manpower. He did not want to waste manpower and money on this uncertain matter. The rumors were about Lai Er's blackmail material, but now it seemed that this was not the case. It made sense. If Lai Er hadn't taken back his own blackmail material when he was dealing with Chenla, how could he have done it so quickly? Leopard opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not say anything. In his opinion, he had not come to a definite conclusion. The main reason was that he was useless and inefficient, wasting time and manpower. Just then, there was a knock on the door. After receiving Yi Hao's permission, a person walked in quickly. This person was Master Tang the Seventh's subordinate. He had brought a document on Master Tang's orders. Yi Hao did not dare to underestimate a document that could be delivered urgently by someone he trusted. He opened the document. There was a photo inside. In the photo was a golden thing that looked like a pocket watch. "This is that thing?" Yi Hao asked. As expected of Master Tang the Seventh. While he was still trying to guess what it was, Master Tang the Seventh had already found the specific target. "Yes. Seventh Master calls it the Golden Compass." That person replied. "Gold." Yi Hao narrowed his eyes and looked at the photo in his hand again. Since this name had come from Master Tang the Seventh's mouth, it did not matter whether Master Tang the Seventh had given it himself. As long as Master Tang the Seventh approved of this name, it proved its value. This made Yi Hao, who was about to give up on the competition, change his mind. But at the same time, since he had decided to get involved, he had to be prepared to pay a price. Cutting his flesh at this time would definitely be painful. While they were talking, Ranchi also came back. "How is it? Didn't you say you found something?" Leopard looked at Ranchi. There was no progress on his side, so he hoped that Ranchi would find something. Ranchi shook his head and briefly explained the 3 people he had followed, as well as what he saw when he went to the empty house. After hearing this, Yi Hao sighed and said to Long Qi, "Put your work aside for a while and go with Baozi to deal with the matters in his hands." "Okay, Brother Hao. By the way, I met that cat today." Ranchi's expression was very conflicted. "Which one?" Yi Hao asked. "The black one." "Oh." Yi Hao and Leopard both understood. No wonder Ranchi's expression was so bad when he came back. They thought it was because he did not find anything. Now it seemed that the main reason was the cat. "I was afraid that it would hinder my actions, so I called Brother Ling. Brother Ling told it to leave. But before it left, it gave me this," Ranchi said as he took out a golden pocket watch-like thing from his pocket and put it on the table in front of him. When Ranchi took out that thing, the person who brought the document under Master Chi's order let out a very obvious gasp. Yi Hao and Leopard stared at the thing in Ranchi's hand. Their eyes followed Ranchi's movements. "Golden compass?" Yi Hao could not believe it. He looked at it a few times, then took the document and looked at the picture. It was exactly the same as the picture. Leopard had the urge to bang his head against the wall. F***CK, I've been investigating for a few days and nights. I haven't slept well. I was mentally prepared for a tough battle, but I'm not even as good as a cat. On the other side, Zheng Tan, who had already returned to Tsinghua University, did not know how Yi Hao would react. He was now annoyed by the cat's cries. Zheng Tan came in from the west gate today. The place he passed by was closer to the western courtyard. The army of pet cats in the western courtyard was getting bigger and bigger. Plus, it was closer to the old residential area. There were always cats from outside walking around here. Many people did not raise cats because of cat noises. The so-called cat noises were when cats were in heat. They would be like the cats that were scattered around now. They would scream like their lives depended on it. It was as if they were competing to see who could scream more miserably. It was quite scary. Spring was coming. Even the cats were restless. Zheng Tan was mentally human. But to be honest, it was impossible for Zheng Tan to be completely calm in the face of these cat noises. That was nonsense. It was like eating vegetarian noodle soup for a few years, and suddenly finding out that the person next to you was eating shredded meat noodles. How could your heart be balanced? Spring was really a season of ripples. Zheng Tan shook his head. He would not ripple for a cat even if he was beaten to death. However, when he was living the life of a monk with a pure heart and few desires, he could not let those bastards who were rippling around him have a good time. When I'm living a pure heart and few desires, you guys should also be living a pure heart and few desires. When I'm eating noodle soup, you guys should also eat noodle soup with me. At least in front of me. Therefore, in a corner of Tsinghua University, in this grassy forest area, which was almost occupied by the surrounding cats at night, when there were ear-piercing cat meows, An extremely strange and ear-piercing howl directly suppressed all the surrounding sounds. And this howl was getting stranger and stranger. It was somewhat like a wolf's howl, but it was also different from a wolf's howl. When dogs heard it, they had to retreat, and it was even more terrifying. The cat noises that came one after another stopped abruptly when the first howl sounded. Moreover, some cats directly ran away after hearing the howl, especially those in the western courtyard who had been beaten by Zheng Tan. They ran especially fast. They knew that in this area, only the black dictator in the eastern courtyard could make such a strange howl. Even if the cats did not know, they would be scared away by the howl. After Zheng Tan finished howling, he moved his ears and did not hear any ear-piercing sounds. Then he was satisfied and balanced. He swung his tail and went home. He took a shower, and then went to sleep in little Pomelo's quilt. He did not know if it was because of the stimulation of Zheng Tan's howls, but the cat noises in the surroundings had decreased a lot recently. However, the loudest one in the eastern courtyard was still the same. Zheng Tan lay on the balcony and shook his ears as he listened to the heart-wrenching cries around the courtyard walls. What was the use of that idiot, the sheriff, barking around the courtyard? Other than men, there were eunuchs. The only female cat was still underage. The owner of the house protected his cat well. If he wanted to hook up with a female cat, he would go to the area around the tiled house, which was where Jiao Wei and the others raced. There were many cats and female cats there. Speaking of racing, Zheng Tan had been brought to Cheng Zhong's place by Tong Qing a few days ago to try out the modified car. Cheng Zhong had never seen a cat drive before. He had only moved the steering wheel down according to the third Master Feng's suggestion. He did not quite understand at the time, but after seeing Zheng Tan drive he understood. After the steering wheel was moved down, even if Zheng Tan drove outside by himself, no one would think that a cat was driving. If they did not look carefully, they would not see Zheng Tan controlling the steering wheel. They would only think that someone nearby was controlling it with a remote control. There were already some children's car toys of this scale. Perhaps in another year or two, there would be more here. When that time came, Zheng Tan might be able to drive the cat car outside. Because he had signed a confidentiality agreement, Cheng Zhong would not tell anyone about the whole thing. However, when Cheng Zhong saw Zheng Tan's expression when he drove the cat car, he was indeed quite shocked. It was no wonder that the third Master Feng had asked him to sign a confidentiality agreement and additional agreements. Now, Cheng Zhong was carrying out the second modification and adjustment. After seeing Zheng Tan drive, he knew what was going on. However, it would take some time for the car to be modified. However, Zheng Tan was not in a hurry. He could afford to wait. Now even if the cat car was modified, he could not drive the cat car outside openly. After yawning, Zheng Tan put the cat car matter aside and thought about it. He did not know what was going on with Yi Hao. If Ranqi took that thing out, how would they react? Zheng Tan raised his paw and rubbed his nose. This was the 10th sneeze today. Did he catch a cold? No, Zheng Tan did not feel that anything was wrong with his body. He was in a good mental state and his body temperature was normal. He just had a bad feeling which made Zheng Tan unhappy. After dinner, Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa chatted in the living room. Jiao Pa had been very busy these days. It was rare for him to have time tonight. He did not go out. He sat on the sofa in the living room and listened to Jiao Ma talk about some of the things that happened during this time. One of the teachers in our English group has a cat. Although I have not seen it, I have heard from other teachers that it is very beautiful. Jiao Ma said. Zheng Tan, who was lying on the sofa, pulled his ear. No matter how beautiful it was just a cat. It was not beautiful, nor was it delicate. It was not good. She said that she would come to see Black Charcoal tomorrow. She said that she wanted to find a little boyfriend for her Tafiacito. Speaking of which, Tafiacito is already more than 1 year old and can give birth to kittens. Jiao Ma laughed. Zheng Tan looked at Jiao Ma, who was smiling brightly in horror. Little boy friend. This can't be true. This can't be true. Sure enough, the bad feeling came true. Jiao Ma, you can't be like this. Your cat son has a cat's body and a human's heart. Jiao Ma looked at Zheng Tan and said to Jiao Pa, hey look, Black Charcoal is looking forward to it. Zheng Tan was speechless. What the hell am I looking forward to? Zheng Tan wanted to hit the ground with his head, but he could not change Jiao Ma's decision. Looking at Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa talking about the female cat named Tafiacito, Zheng Tan wondered if he should skip home tomorrow. It would be safer to skip a few days. There were so many resources in Little Gua's store, including the famous cats. They were all good-looking and well-mannered, and they ate the best cat food in the store. They were all fat and healthy, and they looked just like nobles when they squatted there. Except for their low IQ and weak fighting skills, they were much better than ordinary cats in everything else. Even if Tafiacito's mother wanted to find a male cat, she would find the ones in Xiaogua's store. Besides, Peanut Candy and Li Yuanba lived in the pet center. Peanut Candy could be pushed out. Chapter 158. Zheng Tan had planned to run away from home to avoid this disaster, but Jiao Ma had reminded Zheng Tan several times. Before going to bed, she pinched Zheng Tan's ears and told him not to run away tomorrow. Even if he went out for a walk, he had to come home on time. Shaking his ears, Zheng Tan was very annoyed. Indeed, running away was not a good idea. If he ran away this time, there would be a next time, and he would have to face Jiao Ma's nagging. What should he do? After thinking for a long time, Zheng Tan still could not come up with a solution. He decided not to think about it anymore. When the time came, he would just ignore that cat. Could it be that the female cat wanted to force herself on him? Not every cat was Li Yuanba, and even if it was, Zheng Tan was much stronger than it. The next day, Zheng Tan lay on his balcony and felt depressed for the whole day. He mourned for his unsuccessful cat life. And all of this, in Jiao Ma's eyes, was a sign of impatience. Why the hell am I so impatient? Bang! Zheng Tan did not know how many times he had hit his head on the flower pot beside him today. After dinner, Jiao Ma kept staring at Zheng Tan, as if she was afraid that Zheng Tan would run away. And Jiao Pa did not go out that night. He was reading the newspaper on the side. Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and continued to feel depressed. He occasionally moved the tip of his tail. He had spent the whole day thinking about a few solutions. Just as he was thinking about which one would be the most suitable, Jiao Ma's phone rang. Jiao Ma quickly picked up the phone, said a few words, and walked out with a smile on her face. She went downstairs to pick up the teacher. It was the teacher's first time coming here. Jiao Ma had told her to call after she entered the courtyard. Not long after, Zheng Tan heard the sound of someone going up the stairs. He also heard Jiao Ma talking and laughing with someone else. The man was in his early 40s. He was a colleague of Jiao Ma and a teacher in the same research group. He had a good relationship with Jiao Ma. Although he didn't live in Tsinghua University, he wasn't far from here. When the teacher came in, he was carrying a pet bag in his hand. Zheng Tan could feel the scent of an unfamiliar cat inside. However, the sense of invasion was not strong, nor did it show any malice. It was just cautious in an unfamiliar environment. Zheng Tan stared at the pet bag curiously, and the two children who were doing homework in the room also poked their heads out to look at the cat girl who had just arrived. The teacher opened the pet bag, and from Zheng Tan's angle, he could see the cat hiding inside. Yes, the cat was indeed hiding inside the pet bag. It was more anxious than curious, so it did not step out of the pet bag. It was a silver-colored Scottish fold. It seemed to be in good health. The owner must have taken good care of it. The Scottish fold seemed to be naturally more lovable than other cats. In terms of appearance, it was much better than Zheng Tan, the country bumpkin. It wasn't a hypocrite like Huang Erwo, nor was it the kind of person who wanted to join in the fun like Sheriff, nor was it as domineering as Li Yuanba. The Scottish fold in front of him, Tafiacito, had a quiet temperament, the kind that seemed to stand aloof from worldly affairs. Jiao Yuan was very curious about the Scottish fold. He wanted to take a closer look, but Tafiacito felt it and shrank back into the bag. Jiao Ma stared at Jiao Yuan, who was walking towards them. Jiao Yuan curled his lips and returned to the room. He stood at the door and continued to watch. The teacher took Tafiacito out of the room and put it in his arms to comfort it, dispelling some of its anxiety about this unfamiliar environment. Tafiacito gradually calmed down. Although it was calm, Tafiacito still looked around with vigilance. It was the first time that Jiao Ma saw Tafiacito. She had only heard about Tafiacito before. When she saw Tafiacito, Jiao Ma liked it very much. Scottish folds were indeed very attractive to women. Teacher Mo, your tafiacito is so beautiful. Jiao Ma sighed. Teacher Mo just smiled, but Zheng Tan felt that this teacher's smile was a bit unnatural. However, Teacher Mo really doted on tafiacito. Just by looking at the way she looked at tafiacito, one could tell that she really doted on him. Black Charcoal, come and meet your new friend. Jiao Ma, who was sitting next to Teacher Mo, waved at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan moved his ears and continued to lie on the sofa, pretending that he did not understand. Jiao Pa looked at Zheng Tan, shook his head, and sighed. Pretend, continue to pretend. Teacher Mo did not say anything. Generally, people like Jiao Ma would just say it. How could a cat understand these words? Teacher Mo did not understand, but Jiao Ma naturally knew that Zheng Tan did not understand. She could not reprimand Zheng Tan in front of Teacher Mo, so she just stared at Zheng Tan. Her eyes seemed to say, really disappointing. Zheng Tan did not care so much. He just made up his mind to pretend to be stupid. However, Zheng Tan looked at tafiacito curiously. The ears of a Scottish fold were really small. Teacher Mo put tafiacito on the ground. Tafiacito rubbed Teacher Mo's leg, stepped forward, sniffed around, and then jumped back into Teacher Mo's arms. Oh, your tafiacito is too reserved. Jiao Ma laughed. Indeed, not everyone was as thick-skinned and bold as Zheng Tan and the rest of the Eastern District's 4 cheap men. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were sent back to do homework by Jiao Pa. In the living room, the 3 adults continued to chat. Jiao Pa had already seen that Teacher Mo had something to say, but she could not say too much in front of the children. After being led by Jiao Pa, the children began to complain. Teacher Mo liked to raise cats. In the past, he had raised mongrel cats. However, the few cats that he had raised all liked to run outside. The cats disappeared after a few years. They might have been tricked by cat traffickers or for other reasons. Last year, a friend of hers gave her a Scottish fold, which was now known as tafiacito. Teacher Mo liked it very much, and the cat did not run out much, which saved her a lot of trouble. Some neighbors, relatives, and friends looked at tafiacito with envy. They told Teacher Mo that when tafiacito gave birth to kittens, they would order one. Although Teacher Mo liked cats, she did not know much about cats. As for Scottish folds, she only knew that the probability of a Scottish fold to give birth to a defective cat was very high. Therefore, she wanted to find a healthy male Scottish fold to give birth to a cat that was not born with a Scottish fold. For example, mongrel cats? However, Teacher Mo's plan was strongly opposed by some friends. Indeed, there were not many people who used Scottish folds and mongrel cats. There were more British Shorthairs and American Shorthairs. After all, they looked better in appearance, and their commercial value was much higher than mongrel cats. Hearing this, Jiao Ma's expression changed. Yes, Scottish folds looked much more attractive than black charcoal, but no matter what other cats were like, in Jiao Ma's eyes, her own cat was the best. No one could say anything about it. Her own cat was so good. It was obedient, sensible, and helped to take care of the children. Where could she find such a cat? So you don't like it? Jiao Ma, who was about to refute, was stopped by Jiao Pa, who signaled her to continue listening to Teacher Mo. Zheng Tan also listened. He really did not know much about Scottish folds. He only knew that Scottish folds had folded ears and were very expensive. In the eyes of many people, Scottish folds were famous cats. Teacher Mo saw Jiao Ma's reaction just now, and continued to speak. She did not have many requirements in terms of appearance, as long as the offspring were healthy enough. What made her change her mind was what she experienced when she took the cat to the pet center at noon. When I raised tafiacito, many people were envious and bought a Scottish fold. My sister was one of them. However, she stopped raising it after 2 months, so I took it and raised it with tafiacito. She was also a female cat, but she was 3 months younger than tafiacito. However, my sister's Scottish fold was not as lucky as tafiacito. That cat's tail was stiff, and it could not bend like a normal cat. I took it to Xiaogua's place at noon this afternoon, and the results were not very good. A veterinarian in the pet center who was familiar with Teacher Mo told her that many Scottish folds were accompanied by diseases. Some had short tails or were not flexible, and some had large osteophytes on their legs, as well as other bone genetic diseases. Their joints were also much more fragile than that of ordinary cats. Even if they did not have arthropathy, the degree of cartilage wear and tear of their joints was greater than that of other cats, and they were prone to joint pain, limping, and other problems. Tafiacito was relatively lucky. At least, no problems were found, but I am not sure how long it will be so lucky. In the past I didn't know and didn't understand these things, but now that I know, and since I raised them, I have to be responsible. I need to spend more energy to take care of them, and take them for regular checkups. Before I figure it out, I don't want it to have kittens for the time being. The doctor in the pet center told me that this breed is very special. Even if you want to breed it, you need to have professional knowledge and a certain amount of experience. There are very few people who breed them in China, and there are not many cats who are as lucky as Tafiacito. He advised me not to breed this kind of cat privately. He also said that my sister's cat has to bear the pain caused by bone deformities every time it takes a step. We are all cat owners, and we all know that although cats have expressions, not everyone can understand them. Their pain tolerance is very strong, and they will not cry out in general pain. They are also used to covering up their injuries. This is their nature to protect themselves. So it's hard for me to know how they feel. I just think if I let Tafiacito give birth to kittens without knowing anything, and there's a kitten with a serious bone disease in the kitten, I feel very uncomfortable. Jiaoma was really silent this time. She didn't have much experience in raising cats. Over the years, Zheng Tan was an unusual cat that she didn't need to worry about. She was not a cat, so how could she understand the pain of a cat? Even Zheng Tan couldn't understand the feelings of those cats. After all, Zheng Tan was different from other cats. I am here now to tell Teacher Gu not to think too much. Teacher Mo explained. Jiaoma quickly waved her hand to show that she understood, and asked about the situation of the other cat. Teacher Mo talked with Jiaoma for a while, and then left with Tafiacito. There was still a cat at home that had just been adopted. Teacher Mo was worried and wanted to go back to see it as soon as possible. Zheng Tan's first forced blind date was over before he could carry out his plan to make trouble. However, Teacher Mo asked Jiaoma to take Zheng Tan to play when she was free. Her two cats didn't like to go out, and Zheng Tan had too many criminal records. All the teachers in the English group knew that Zheng Tan could go to the school for a walk. In the evening, Jiaopa deliberately looked up some documents and magazines about Scottish fold cats published in China and abroad. She browsed the pet forum, and Zheng Tan squatted on the desk to read. There was a lot of debate about this breed. Maybe the problem wasn't as simple as black and white. The reason why Scottish fold cats were demonized was probably because people who didn't know anything and only saw the commercial value of the breed. Chapter 159. Although the Jiaoma felt regretful about Tafiacito's incident, it did not dampen her interest in finding Zheng Tan a little girlfriend. This made Zheng Tan very annoyed. Therefore, Zheng Tan rarely stayed at home except for going home to eat and sleep. When he was at home, he could always hear the Jiaoma nagging about it. Zheng Tan was also often scolded by the Jiaoma. When Zheng Tan returned home at dinner time, the Jiaoma was chopping ribs in the kitchen. When she turned her head, she saw Zheng Tan running back from outside. "You've been walking outside all day. I bet you've already become a father." The Jiaoma raised the knife and cut the ribs on the chopping board into smaller pieces. "I bet you won't even know that you've become a father." Zheng Tan heard the sound of chopping ribs in the kitchen. He raised his paw and rubbed his ears uncomfortably. The Jiaoma was so scary like this. Today the weather was clear and the sun was shining brightly. The weather warmed up, and it felt much better to go out for a walk. Zheng Tan sniffed an unknown flower on the grass and sneezed. It had been a week since he gave that thing to Ranchi. Zheng Tan did not know how Yi Hao would react. However, Celestine did not appear during this time. No one from the Jiao family came to disturb him. Perhaps Zheng Tan did not know that they had disturbed him. He just observed that the Jiaopa did not do anything unusual recently. Zheng Tan went to Uncle Lame's neighborhood again. He did not find anything unusual. It was still empty, so he did not go there again. He walked slowly to the side of a sports field. There were some people playing football in the field, but they did not pay attention to whether there was a cat watching them. This sports field was considered one of the older sports fields in Tsinghua University. Compared to the surrounding buildings, The sports field was slightly lower. Zheng Tan stood on a slightly higher ground and watched. There were some bushes and evergreen trees here. They did not look bleak in the winter. When spring came, the flowers would not sprout vigorously like other trees to show their vitality. After squatting and watching for a while, Zheng Tan leaned against the trunk behind him. He moved his feet lazily and swept away the grass blocking his view. Bang! The ball bounced off the fence. A student ran over to pick it up. When he looked up, he saw the black cat sitting against the tree. He shouted, "Look, the cat sitting posture is so interesting. It's like a human." Zheng Tan glanced at the student and ignored him, and continued to sit there and pretend to be deep. A student who was closest to the cat trotted over to take a look and said to the person who had just shouted, "Do you think it's funny for a cat to sit like that? You're ignorant." In fact, many people don't know that a cat sitting like that is most likely because it is sick. Because of its illness, its hind legs are in unbearable pain. Cats do not want to use their hind legs to bear their weight, so they choose to sit like that. The student who shouted suddenly understood. No wonder. This cat looks quite heavy. The pressure on its hind legs is even greater. It's so pitiful. It's such a good cat. Unfortunately, it's a sick cat. Zheng Tan. *T. You're the sick one. I'm so healthy and strong. How can I be sick? The two students had walked away and continued to play football. Even if they were here, they could not hear Zheng Tan's roar in his heart. Zheng Tan stomped on a few innocent flowers beside him. He used to sit like that too. He was even more arrogant when he was in the night building. Why didn't he hear about it from others? However, even though this was the first time Zheng Tan had heard of such a theory, he was not sure if the reason why the other cats were sitting like that was what the student had said. It might be, and it might not be. The Scottish fold incident made Zheng Tan understand that many cats in the world did not have a good body since birth. Zheng Tan felt lucky, and at the same time, he also felt that it was good to be an ordinary cat like him. Although cheap, ordinary cats had their own advantages. On average, ordinary cats were born with stronger physiques than ordinary cat breeds, and their ability to survive in the wild was not weak. After comforting himself, Zheng Tan got up and shook off the grass on his body. He looked at the sky, glanced around, and walked out from the side door closest to him. Zheng Tan usually did not walk through this side door. Since he was bored today, he went out for a walk. After going out of the side door, Zheng Tan walked along the outside for a while. When he came across an outer wall, he jumped on it and continued to walk forward. At 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, some students would set up street stalls here to earn some pocket money and sell some small things. Most of them were gadgets and clothes that girls liked. The cost of this kind of business was not high, and the sales were not bad. At this time, some people had already come to grab the space. They put a layer of cloth on the ground to occupy the space, and then put the goods one by one. When it was almost 5 o'clock, the surrounding open space was full of students setting up street stalls. Zheng Tan squatted there and watched these students busy. As he watched, he suddenly heard a few girls not far in front of him cheering. There was bamboo planted in the wall of this area, and a few bamboo leaves blocked Zheng Tan's sight. Zheng Tan pushed the bamboo leaves in front of him away, walked a few steps forward, and looked in the direction of the sound. A young man in his 20s with a mohawk hairstyle stood there. His hair was dyed yellow, and his clothes were somewhat non-mainstream. He looked a bit like a gangster. The young man was holding a poker card in his hand and playing a card trick. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept over the high peaks of several female students in front of him. Zheng Tan pulled his ear and despised him. In addition to despising this person's character, Zheng Tan also despised his skills. Since he had seen Uncle Lame's tricks, looking at these street tricks again, he suddenly felt a little uninterested. However, street tricks were also very technical. Even if there were fewer inherited tricks now, he had to admit that there were indeed some capable people who were even more capable than some of the so-called XX masters. Zheng Tan squatted on the wall and watched the person play cards. Although he despised this person just now, he had to admit that this kid had some skills. Perhaps he was aware of the different sight of the surrounding crowd. The young man turned his head and looked behind the wall after playing a game. This person's perception is quite sharp. Zheng Tan evaluated in his heart. However, after seeing the young man's face, Zheng Tan was puzzled. Why does he look a little familiar? However, Zheng Tan was very sure that he had never seen this person before. Today was definitely the first time he saw him. That's strange. Who is this guy? For a moment, Zheng Tan couldn't remember why she felt this familiar feeling. Compared to Zheng Tan's puzzlement, the young man seemed to be startled when he saw Zheng Tan. His hands didn't play well, and a few cards flew out. Because of this, he was laughed at by several beautiful female students standing at the side. Zheng Tan watched for a while and then left. Little Pomelo was about to finish school, so he had to go and wait for her. When the young man turned his head for the third time, he found that the black cat had finally left. He quickly put on a smiling face and joked with the surrounding female students. 10 minutes later, a car slowed down and came over. The car window opened, and the driver whistled. Sorry, I'll be leaving first. See you guys. The young man who was playing cards put the cards neatly into his pocket and walked towards the car. Before he left, he even sent a flying kiss, causing the female students to cover their mouths and laugh. The young man opened the car door and got into the back seat. He stretched out his arms and crossed his legs. You're late, senior brother Wei, the young man said. The person in the driver's seat was Celestine, whom Zheng Tan hadn't seen for a while. Isn't this good? I even gave you a chance to talk to the female students, Celestine said. Don't mention it. I originally wanted to get to know a few girls and get their phone numbers. I didn't expect to meet a cat. What made me the most unhappy was that the cat kept staring at me from behind. It caused me to lose my ability to play. Celestine's eyebrows twitched and asked, That cat is black, right? That's right. That's why I said that the black cat is evil. The person in the back slapped his thigh and sighed. Thinking back to the black cat, he didn't pay attention to Celestine's tone just now. Finally willing to come back? I thought you would always be a rebellious prodigal and stubbornly stick to that path and never look back, Celestine said. Let me correct you. That's called a game life. Moreover, stubbornness doesn't mean stubbornness. The person in the back answered confidently. Oh, so you've realized? With your current image? Celestine laughed. What's wrong with my image? I think my current image is quite good. The person in the back shook his non-mainstream jacket and touched his new hairstyle. Yes, it's good. It's so good that it can make your dad's dormant volcano erupt again. Then what do you think my image is now? Rascal? Boorish? Ruffian? TSK, you don't understand. The person in the back waved his finger. Have you heard of the term ruffian philosophy? If there was no ruffian philosophy, our country's history wouldn't be so rich and colorful. Just think about some of the founding emperors in ancient times. Also, don't people fake things in football games? Even if it's a strategic dive, it's still a dive. Who doesn't play a little rogue and pretend to be a little ruffian? TSK, I haven't seen you for a few years and you're already acting as a philosopher. Celestine smiled and shook his head. The person in the back didn't comment. He looked at the surrounding buildings through the window and said excitedly, Shall we go play at the night building you mentioned? No, let's go to Senior Walnut's first. No, I'll be beaten to death by Senior Walnut. The person in the back covered his face and screamed. It's okay, I'll collect your corpse. The next day, Zheng Tan didn't leave the school gate to play. The 4 scumbags of the East District were squatting on a thick sycamore tree, looking at a group of people flying kites on the lawn not far away. On the main road of the school, Celestine drove slowly. Aren't we going directly to the night building? Why are we here? The person in the back seat complained while chewing gum. He moved his arms. He had been beaten up badly by Senior Walnut yesterday, but fortunately, he hadn't hit his face. Celestine didn't answer. He just drove slowly and paid attention to the surroundings, especially to the older and thicker trees. After seeing the 4 cats squatting on the trees, Celestine smiled and drove the car in that direction. Found it. The person in the back seat rolled down the window and looked in the direction Celestine pointed. There were people flying kites there. He thought Celestine was talking about one of them, but after noticing the 4 cats squatting on a tree, his expectant smile disappeared. Cats are a bunch of idiots. PFFF. After scolding, the person in the back seat spat the gum in his mouth into the trash can next to him. He was very proud that he could spit it into the trash can from more than a meter away. But his pride didn't last long. When he raised his head to look at the 4 stupid cats in the tree, he was choked by what he saw. Chapter 160. The reaction of the 4 cats seemed to be telling the person in the car, "We won't bark, we'll just look at you like this." Perhaps it was a psychological effect, but the person who had said cats are a bunch of idiots felt that the gazes of the 4 cats had changed from 30% disdain and 70% alienation to 30% alienation and 70% disdain. In fact, he hadn't finished the sentence of "cats are a bunch of idiots." After spitting out the chewing gum, he should have proudly added, "Even if you scold it, it won't know." Unfortunately, before he could finish the sentence, he was choked back by the reactions of the 4 cats. Wei Lung looked at the person who was choked to the point that his face turned pale. He smiled and said, Mao, why do you dislike all cats? They didn't provoke you." Mao, the person with the mohawk hairstyle, didn't answer. Instead, he pointed at the 4 cats on the tree and asked Celestine, "Those 4 cats, are they looking down on me? Why do I feel like they're scolding me in their hearts?" "You're thinking too much." Celestine knew his junior very well. This kid had a bit of a persecutory delusion. But he couldn't be blamed. He was forced to do this. It was an unbearable past. In fact, the situation of the 4 cats looking at Mao could only be said to be a coincidence. A coincidence that Zheng Tan didn't expect. Among the 4 cats, Zheng Tan definitely understood Mao's words. There was no doubt about that. Fatty was probably able to understand a few of the words. Even if he didn't, he probably felt that Mao was talking about them a lot just now. It was too targeted. Fatty was keenly aware of it, so he also looked over. As for Huang Erwo, this guy only looked over curiously when he heard the sound of Mao spitting out the chewing gum. As for Sheriff, he did whatever the other cats did. Thus, there was a situation where the 4 cats were looking at Mao at the same time. Was he thinking too much? Hearing Celestine's words, Mao scratched his head. He was probably overthinking. Thinking of this, Mao looked up at the tree again, and happened to see Zheng Tan looking at it with even more disdain. Compared to the other cats, this look was too obvious. Mao, who was just a little suspicious, was sure that it wasn't thinking too much. If Mao's expression was as if he had just eaten a mouthful of rice with mosquito legs, then his expression now was as if he had just eaten **T. Taking a deep breath, Mao said to itself, "Don't be angry with a bunch of stupid cats." He didn't come here to continue being entangled with these cats. Not wanting to stay here for even a second longer, Mao urged Celestine, "Senior brother, who are you picking up? Hurry up and leave this place." "Okay," Celestine shouted at Zheng Tan. "Black charcoal, come quickly. Let's go out and play." Before Celestine's car arrived, Zheng Tan had already noticed it. However, he saw that there was a person in the back seat. It was the same person he saw playing cards outside the school wall yesterday. Zheng Tan didn't pay much attention to it, and continued to watch the people flying kites on the grass. He was just watching 2 kids having a kite fight. He didn't expect to suddenly hear a curse directed at cats. Did the 4 of them offend him? Obviously not. Was the person Celestine brought an idiot? After hearing Celestine's call, Zheng Tan didn't immediately go over. He didn't like the kid in the back seat. At first glance, he could tell that the kid was a delinquent. Jiao Ma had said to stay away from delinquents. Jiao Ma's words were directed at Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo. As for Zheng Tan, speaking of which, how many delinquents did he come into contact with? However, at this time, Zheng Tan didn't think that he had done anything wrong at all. Seeing that there was no response, Celestine continued to shout, "Let's go. Let's go to the night building to play. I already told your cat dad." Originally, Zheng Tan didn't plan to go out to play. However, after thinking about it, going to the night building was also a good idea. He wanted to see what Yi Hao and the others were up to. Thinking of this, Zheng Tan came down from the tree and walked towards Celestine. Seeing the black cat getting closer and closer, Mao suddenly had a bad feeling. He was wondering who Celestine was talking to. Now it seemed that it was actually a cat. Therefore, Mao's first reaction was to quickly roll up the car window, afraid that the cat would jump into the car. However, Even though the back window was closed, the front window was still open. Zheng Tan jumped into the car through the window next to Celestine. Since there was someone in the back seat, Zheng Tan directly stayed in the front passenger seat. Air Mao looked at Zheng Tan as if he was the plague. However, there was only so much space in the car, so he couldn't avoid Zheng Tan. Air Mao's expression didn't look too good. Zheng Tan squatted in the front passenger seat and kept staring at Air Mao. The more he looked, the more familiar it seemed. Where had he seen it before? Zheng Tan really couldn't remember. After Zheng Tan jumped into the car, Celestine drove away from Tsinghua University and headed towards the night building. Celestine had a house not far from Tsinghua University. It was in a residential area that had just been built a few years ago. There was an elevator house, but usually Celestine didn't live at home. After all, he was the only one there, and it was boring to stay at home. Therefore, most of the time he still lived in the company. At least, there were some comrades and other colleagues there. When he was bored, he would play cards and chat. Every week he would hang out at the night building to relax. His life was pretty good. Recently he even hooked up with a primary school teacher, but Celestine didn't tell anyone about this. After receiving a call from Air Mao saying that it was coming to Tsinghua, Celestine had been tidying up at home for the past few days. He prepared a room for Air Mao. Air Mao's parents lived in Tsinghua, but Air Mao would never live with his parents. Otherwise, there would be a small quarrel every day and a big fight every 3 days. It would cause a lot of trouble. After thinking about it, only Celestine, who was single, would be more convenient. Therefore, he called Celestine to come over and stay the night. As for how long he would stay, it depended on Air Mao's mood. On the way, Air Mao complained to Celestine about why he had to bring a cat to the night building. Celestine simply told him about Zheng Tan's past. This cat is very popular. Not to mention Yi Hao and the others, even Senior Walnut owes this cat a favor. Air Mao looked in disbelief at the black cat squatting in the passenger seat. This cat was really something to be able to make Senior Walnut owe it a favor. However, the more it was like this, the more it highlighted how strange this cat was. If it was a normal cat, then it would be fine. As for this kind of special cat, Air Mao felt that such a cat should be kept at a respectful distance. Cats are quite annoying. They just like to torment people. Air Mao sighed. While Celestine and Air Mao were chatting, Zheng Tan was also observing them. He knew that these two were fellow disciples. Zheng Tan was also curious about what Celestine's master did. These 3 fellow disciples had different professions. Moreover, he didn't know if there were any other disciples besides these 3. However, other than that, Zheng Tan's main attention was attracted by the way Celestine addressed him. Air Mao? This name sounded very familiar. Zheng Tan tried hard to recall and finally remembered. Celestine and Senior Walnut had mentioned this name before. Zhao Le and that guy called Wang Bin had also mentioned it before. Wang Bin? Zheng Tan raised his head and stared at Air Mao. At the same time, he recalled the young man called Wang Bin that he saw at the 3rd Master Feng's banquet. No wonder he looked so familiar. Air Mao and Wang Bin looked so alike. If it was just their faces, they were exactly the same. It was just that their temperaments were completely different. One was mature and steady, and looked like an elite. As for the one in front of him, no one would doubt that he was a hooligan. Therefore, at first glance, even if Wang Bin stood beside him, very few people would notice. If these two were really twin brothers, then Air Mao's background wasn't simple. However, why did Air Mao look like he wasn't doing well? The difference was too big. Compared to Wang Bin, it was like heaven and earth. Zheng Tan thought of Zhong Yan. Was Air Mao's situation similar to Zhong Yan's? Perhaps not to the extent of having a stepfather or stepmother, but he was probably not loved by his parents. How pitiful. Air Mao, who was sitting in the back seat, had been chatting with Celestine and looking at the scenery outside the car window. However, from the corner of his eyes, he kept looking at the black cat that was squatting in the front passenger seat. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore and patted the driver's seat. "Senior, can you stop this cat from staring at me? The Tijans are here." Celestine was helpless. Black Charcoal, stop staring at him. Zheng Tan had also finished studying Air Mao. He lowered his head and closed his eyes to take a nap. It would take about half an hour to get to the night tower. The exact time would depend on the traffic. During this time, Zheng Tan could take a nap. After arriving at the night tower, Yi Hao took Air Mao through the side door and went straight upstairs to the private room that Celestine often used. Zheng Tan followed them upstairs. The guards at the side door were already used to the black cat. Air Mao, on the other hand, was curious about their reactions. After seeing the black cat, they didn't react at all. During this time, Yi Hao was very busy. Celestine didn't want to disturb them. He took Air Mao to the private room to drink and chat. At night, they would listen to the performance of the East Palace. Celestine didn't want to tell Air Mao about Yi Hao's situation. Moreover, Yi Hao was busy with something that needed to be kept confidential. This time, Yi Hao really had to thank Zheng Tan. Why did Master Tang VII call it the Golden Compass? Because it was related to gold. Lai Er's subordinates were fighting fiercely. Others were taking the opportunity to reorganize and get involved. It was very chaotic. On the other hand, Yi Hao and the others were quietly making a fortune. Zheng Tan jumped onto the sofa and occupied it. Air Mao didn't sit on the sofa. Instead, it dragged a chair over and said to Celestine, "When did cats become so important? Is this still a cheap cat? Your friend really allowed you to bring this cat in? Isn't he afraid that it'll scratch these sofas worth tens of thousands? Even if your friend doesn't care about tens of thousands, he's being too lenient." Celestine shrugged. "I can't help it. I said that this cat is special. Actually, someone gave this cat a nickname. It's called the Lucky Cat." Air Mao paused, then laughed out loud. It almost fell off the chair. Lucky Cat? That's it. In some small towns and villages, you can buy one for about 10 yuan. It can't make a fortune. Air Mao was about to say more, but when it saw Celestine's serious expression, it stopped laughing. "Senior, are you serious?" "Yes, I'm not joking." Celestine nodded. "So, I suggest that you interact with this cat more often. For example, you can go with it when it goes for a walk. You're bored anyway." Chapter 161. Since the first time they met, Zheng Tan and Air Mao had given each other bad comments. And this kind of bad comments could not be changed by Celestine with just a few words. Air Mao told Celestine about what he had seen in the past 2 years, while glancing at Zheng Tan from time to time. As for Celestine, while talking to Air Mao, his hands did not stop peeling peanuts, giving some to Zheng Tan and some to himself. Like a slave. Air Mao despised Celestine's behavior. But after all, they were brothers and had known each other for so many years. Air Mao also knew Celestine well. If this cat was not really capable, Celestine would never treat it like this. Maneki Nico? Maybe. Air Mao had not seen it with its own eyes, so it was still suspicious. If it did not see it with its own eyes or hear it with its own ears, it would not admit anything. Even if it was Celestine who said it, it would also discount the so-called truth. Zheng Tan lay on the sofa, waiting for enough peanuts to be peeled, then jumped onto the coffee table to eat peanuts. "Have you thought about what you are going to do next?" Celestine asked Air Mao. "These 2 years I have been running a small business outside. Now, I am not going to do anything for the time being. I am going to rest and enjoy myself, then sleep until I wake up naturally every day." As Air Mao spoke, its eyes were still glancing at Zheng Tan. Seeing that Zheng Tan was focused on eating peanuts, it jumped up from the chair and attacked with lightning speed. "Pa! Subdue the demon." After a successful attack, Air Mao quickly retreated 5 meters away. Celestine and Zheng Tan were speechless. Zheng Tan really did not expect Air Mao to attack. Although they did not have a good opinion of each other, perhaps because of Celestine, Zheng Tan did not feel any malice from Air Mao. Because of this, Zheng Tan lowered his vigilance a lot. He was not prepared at all, but in the end, he fell into Air Mao's trap. Air Mao didn't hit him. His quick move was just to stick a paper on Zheng Tan's forehead. Zheng Tan didn't know what was drawn on the paper pasted on his forehead, but looking at the situation, Zheng Tan could guess that this was the legendary talisman that could summon gods and exorcise ghosts, subdue demons and cure diseases. Subdue demons and devils? Subdue your Motherf * King Demon. Damn it. Motherf * Cur. Zheng Tan shook his head to get rid of the sticky paper on his forehead. He stopped eating peanuts and jumped off the coffee table to rush towards Air Mao. If I don't flip out, you'll really think I'm weak and easy to bully. Thus, the man and the cat began to fight in the private room. At first, Air Mao used a feather pillow on the chair to block the attack, but when he realized that the pillow was quickly torn apart and realized that he had seriously underestimated the enemy's attack power, Air Mao covered his head with his jacket and hid behind Celestine. After the feather pillow was torn apart, feathers flew everywhere in the private room, and the tidy room suddenly became a mess. Celestine looked at all of this. He really wanted to drag Air Mao over and beat him up. He was already in his 20s, but he still looked so unreliable. Many times his words and actions always made people want to beat him up first. After messing around for more than 10 minutes, Zhang Tan squatted on the coffee table and continued to eat peanuts. However, from the way he swung his tail, it was obvious that Zhang Tan was not in a good mood. No one would be happy if a subdue demons and devils talisman was stuck on them. Not to mention that Zhang Tan had secrets in his heart. Air Mao slowly moved towards the chair. His jacket was almost torn into strips, but for Air Mao, as long as there was no wound on his face, he didn't care about anything. Air Mao, why are you arguing with the cat? Celestine said. Air Mao rolled his tattered jacket into a ball and put it aside. Didn't you say that I should get along well with this cat? The relationship between men is built by fighting. Just like us brothers, who doesn't have a relationship built by fighting with each other? Celestine rubbed his forehead and stopped thinking about the fight. Instead, he pointed at the talisman that had been stepped on several times on the ground and asked, "Where did you get that thing?" Zhang Tan's eating slowed down a bit, and his ears turned to Air Mao. He also wanted to know where Air Mao got this so-called talisman. Was he really going to subdue demons and devils? Air Mao thought for a while and answered, "When I came to Chuhua City, I saw an old man at the train station. He had a bag and a book, and he chased after me and asked me to show him my love. He even wrote down his name on the book. I gave him 10 yuan, and he gave me this thing, saying that it was used to subdue demons and devils." At some stations or platforms, there would always be people begging or asking people to show their love. When there were too many people, it was hard to tell the difference between the real and the fake. Gradually, who knew whether it was because society was too cold, or because people had become shrewd? Or maybe those scams had catalyzed people's indifference. When people offered their love, their first reaction was to call them scammers, instead of sympathy. Zhang Tan didn't know if Air Mao knew about this, but from the looks of it, even if he knew, he was just casually spending money for fun and didn't care at all. So this so-called talisman was actually just a souvenir that he had exchanged for 10 yuan? Zhang Tan inexplicably felt a little more at ease. Celestine's focus wasn't on the souvenir talisman, but he said, "You really wrote your name on the book?" "I did, why wouldn't I? I spent 10 yuan on it, and I used the hard pen calligraphy that I've practiced for more than 10 years to write. It's better than the names on the book." "Really? If that's the case, then when those people who offered their love later in the book wrote their names, they would know that a person called Wang Ming had donated 10 yuan, Celestine said in a mocking tone. "I'm not stupid enough to write my name and tell others that I was also scammed. That would be so embarrassing." Sometimes people who gave money didn't do it willingly but were asked to donate. There was once a newspaper report of passers-by being beaten up for not giving money. Thus, some people felt that love that didn't come from their own will was very embarrassing, especially men with strong self-esteem. Since Air Mao said that he had written his name on the book, but it wasn't his name, then whose name had he written? Had he just made it up? "Whose name did you write?" Celestine was puzzled. "Wang Bin." Air Mao was immensely proud of himself. Zhang Tan and Celestine, who knew how Air Mao's brother would react when he found out. And this was probably just one of the things that Air Mao had done that wasn't very conspicuous. Zhang Tan wondered if he would see Wang Bin's name on the wall in the future, on those advertisements for getting permits, air ventilation, drilling holes, grinding floors, cleaning sewers, or on the antenna poles for curing chronic ailments. It was hard to say. Zhang Tan felt that if he were Wang Bin, he would definitely beat Air Mao so badly that even his father wouldn't recognize him. Celestine continued to rub his forehead. "You really know how to make enemies for yourself. You're just courting death." Air Mao didn't take it to heart at all. He turned his face and leaned over to Celestine. Look. Celestine gave him a puzzled look. You have pimples? You've become thick-skinned again? Or do you want me to slap you? What? Ermau waved his hand and pointed at his ears. He said proudly. Do you see that? Super big earlobes. The old people always say that longevity is a blessing. Zheng Tan took a look. The so-called super big earlobes was a bit of an exaggeration. But compared to people with small earlobes, Ermau's earlobes were indeed considered big. At first, Ermau was waiting for Celestine to be envious. Who knew that Celestine would calmly say, Don't be ridiculous. Although I'm not very educated, I know that earlobes are genetic. Or a dominant. You have to thank your parents. We have to respect science. Ermau leaned back and stared at Celestine seriously for 2 seconds. Senior, when did you start to respect science? You're even asking such profound questions. Ermau and Zheng Tan were shocked by Celestine's words. Was Celestine influenced by Jiaopa and the others? Celestine did not feel that there was anything wrong with him. He continued, double eyelids, high nose, big earlobes, long eyelashes, etc. all belong to this dominant inheritance. Oh, and the chin is also hereditary. Look at those celebrities. Their parents' chins are not so sharp, but they are completely different on TV. It's obvious that most of them have plastic surgery. Ermau still looked at Celestine with suspicion. He was not suspicious of Celestine's words, but he was puzzled that Celestine would say such things. Based on Ermau's understanding of Celestine, this senior usually read political, military, and sports newspapers in his free time. When did he change to reading science? And hereditary? He used to despise those so-called experts and professors. Why did he change now? There must be a reason. However, Celestine did not wait for Ermau to ask more questions. He changed the topic and talked about other things. Zheng Tan continued to listen. When he came today, he thought that he would hear some things about Yi Hao. However, until now, Celestine did not intend to say anything. It seemed like he did not want Ermau to know. Ermau and Celestine were seniors and juniors, but Ermau and Yi Hao did not know each other at all. There was limited trust between them. From this, Zheng Tan could infer that the thing on Yi Hao's side was indeed very important. It seemed like he did not want to hear any useful news today. After listening to the singing in the evening, the two people and the cat left the night building. Celestine sent Zheng Tan back to Tsinghua University first. Then he drove Ermau to his place of residence. In the car, without Zheng Tan glaring at him, Ermau seemed to be more at ease. Senior Wei, I'll stay at your place for a while. I'll move out in 2 weeks. 2 weeks should be enough for me to find a satisfactory house. Ermau said. What's the trouble? You can stay at my place. I'm usually at the company anyway. If you're here, we can keep each other company. Come on, Senior Wei. We've known each other for so many years. Do you think I don't know you? Ermau winked. You have a target, right? Hurry up. Look at people around your age. Their children are already big. In the past, it was inconvenient because of my job. Now you have to hurry up. Don't think I can't see it. I'll leave your house to you and sister-in-law. I don't want to be a third wheel. Although Ermau looked unreliable, his observation skills were not weak. Once Ermau decided on something, Celestine would not change his mind. Celestine did not argue and said, Okay. However, have you decided to rent or buy a house? It depends on the situation. If there's something I like, I'll buy it. Anyway, I've made some money from selling things these past 2 years. Renting a house is also not bad. After all, I haven't decided how long I'll stay in Tsinghua City. Ermau leaned on the back seat and tapped his fingers on the seat. Senior, do you have any good suggestions? Chapter 162. Inside the university? Ermau frowned. He had never thought of renting a house in Tsinghua University. Generally speaking, there were more restrictions in the university, unlike outside where he could do whatever he wanted. I remember renting out a house there, but there was a little bit of resistance. However, the atmosphere was good, and it was quiet enough. You could sleep until you woke up naturally. The people living there are of high quality. One is marked by the company one keeps. Didn't a magazine say before that the living environment has an impact on a person's character? You should be more careful, Celestine said in the tone of an elder. Mao curled his lips and did not say anything. In fact, Celestine wanted Mao to live in the university, because of several considerations. Mao was the most worrisome one among his fellow disciples. Although he looked like he didn't know any better, there were many things that he understood in his heart. However, in the past few years he had probably gotten to know a few people from all walks of life. Wei Ling was afraid that Mao would continue to mingle in Chuhua City. Although he didn't expect this fellow to immediately turn over a new leaf, he still hoped for a better transition. Celestine was not sure about the other places in Chuhua University, but the East Side family compound was really good. If Mao could gain some positive energy from the retired teachers, Celestine would be quite satisfied. He would be more confident when he called his master. As for the resistance of renting a house there, Celestine believed in Mao's ability. After all, Mao was not the kind of person who did not know anything. If he really made a decision, he would definitely have a way. Celestine lived close to the university. If something happened to Mao, he would not go to his father. As his senior, he would be responsible for cleaning up the mess. In addition to Mao, Celestine also considered the Jiao family. Associate Professor Jiao would be leaving soon. During this time, Celestine could not always take care of the Jiao family. If Mao was there, he could help take care of the Jiao family. It was said that taking care of people could increase one's sense of responsibility. Celestine decided to let Mao try. Zheng Tan did not know that someone was eyeing the East Side family compound. He was calculating the arrangements for the next week. The Jiao family was counting down every day. The time of Jiao Pa's departure was getting closer and closer. Zheng Tan was also counting the days. One afternoon, Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and looked at the calendar on the wall. Next Monday he would probably spend the whole day at Xiaogui's pet center. On Friday night, a foreign band would perform at the night building. On Saturday, the third Master Fong would go to talk business with old Lu. Zheng Tan would follow him and race toy cars with old Lu's son Lu Yao. Apart from these things, Zheng Tan did not plan to go out for a walk before Jiao Pa left. He would just walk around the campus. Most of the time, he would lie on the tree in the East Side family compound and sleep. When the Jiao family came back, they would be able to see him. However, Zheng Tan wondered if his life would be more difficult after Jiao Pa left. Most of the time, Zheng Tan would go out for a walk with Jiao Pa's permission. Jiao Ma was more conservative. Many times when Zheng Tan went out to play, especially at night, Jiao Ma was against it at first. She was scared by the cat trapping incident. She felt that it was not safe to go out at night with cat traffickers everywhere. She was afraid that Zheng Tan would not be able to come back after he went out. If Zheng Tan made a mistake outside when the Jiao Pa was not around, such as coming home late or getting hurt in a fight outside, Jiao Ma would not let him go out. What would he do? Would he have to stay at home all day? He would definitely be bored to death. He might even get depression. After getting used to running outside, Zheng Tan deeply felt that staying at home was a waste of time, because he could only sleep at home. Rolling on the sofa, Zheng Tan hung his head on the edge of the sofa. The tip of his tail wagged rhythmically as he thought about what to do in the future. His gaze swept across the living room and stopped at the master bedroom. The door to the master bedroom was open. The door to the balcony was also open for ventilation. The sunlight shone in, raising the room temperature by a few degrees. However, Zheng Tan was not staring at the master bedroom because it was well lit and ventilated. His target was actually the bulky desktop computer on the desk. This computer was usually only used by the Jiao Pa. Jiao Ma did not use it much. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were only allowed to play it on the weekends. The Jiao Pa was afraid that Jiao Yuan would get addicted to the game, so he strictly limited the time. The computer had a password, and other than Jiao Ma, only Zheng Tan knew the password. Usually, when the Jiao Pa used the computer to surf the internet, Zheng Tan would be watching from the side, so he was very familiar with the password. Think about it, the Jiao Pa was abroad, Jiao Ma was working, and Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo went to school from Monday to Friday. This way, Zheng Tan could surf the internet without worrying about being discovered by the Jiao Pa. The Jiao Ma was not that observant, so Zheng Tan would not be discovered if he was careful. It had been a long time since he went online. Although the Jiaopa knew that his cat was different from the rest, he would never have thought that his cat had already started to think about the computer. After finally thinking of something to kill time at home, Zheng Tan jumped off the sofa with satisfaction and decided to go out for a walk. The temperature in Chuhua City was rising fast, so it would not wait for you to prepare yourself. After the weather warmed up, there were no more coats, cotton-padded jackets, or down jackets. The Pang squatted on its balcony, kicking its paws to bask in the sun. When it saw Zheng Tan coming out of the building, it squinted its eyes and looked at him, then closed its eyes and continued to sleep. It did not have any intention of moving at all. Zheng Tan did not see the other two cats, and Sheriff had stopped barking around recently. Maybe he went somewhere else to look for female cats. When he slowly walked out of the gate of the courtyard, Zheng Tan saw a man in sportswear and sunglasses squatting on a stone block by the gate of the east side courtyard, with a lollipop in his mouth. When Zheng Tan came out, the man kept staring at Zheng Tan, with a weird smile on his face. He looked very annoying. At first, Zheng Tan just glanced at him casually, then stopped looking. He cursed in his heart, and was about to ignore him. But after 2 steps he suddenly stopped. No. This person must be someone he knew. Zheng Tan turned his head and looked at the man squatting on the stone block. After a closer look, he realized that the thick sunglasses could not hide the idiot temperament. This guy was definitely that idiot Air Mao. Different from the last time Zheng Tan saw Air Mao. Air Mao was not wearing the non-mainstream clothes today. His hair was dyed black again, and he was wearing the same sportswear as the students on the school field. If the sunglasses were removed, he would look very similar to the atmosphere of the school. Seeing Zheng Tan look over, Air Mao raised his hand and waved. Hey Black Coal, go out and play. Zheng Tan was speechless. Black Coal your ass. This kind of person who added words to other people's names for no reason was the most King annoying. Zheng Tan looked around. The entrance of the courtyard was indeed not a good place to fight. Forget it, he would let Air Mao go this time. Zheng Tan turned and continued to walk forward, quickening his pace. He did not want to stay here and face Air Mao. Oh right Black Coal, I will be moving here in a few days. According to initial estimates, it should be in your building, Air Mao said slowly. Zheng Tan heard the words behind him and stopped abruptly. He pulled his ears and looked at Air Mao, trying to figure out if Air Mao was telling the truth. Zheng Tan originally thought that Air Mao was like Ranchi, who would avoid cats as much as possible. But looking at Air Mao's despicable look, this guy was preparing to go against the flow and become braver with every setback. Obviously, the more Air Mao disliked you, the more often he would show his presence to disgust you. But Zheng Tan thought about the residents of his building. Many of the teachers in the courtyard were repulsed by outsiders. They felt that outsiders were too complicated and did not know their backgrounds, so they did not trust them. In the Jiao family's building B, although there were some residents who did not live there, if they wanted to rent out their houses to outsiders, the first person they had to deal with was Old Man Lon. Old Man Lon hated it the most when people rented out their houses to unreliable people for money. Using gifts to bribe people would not only be ineffective, but would also make Old Man Lon hate them even more. If these methods did not work, what could Air Mao do? After thinking that Air Mao's chances of success were not high, Zheng Tan was relieved. He ignored Air Mao and jogged away. Air Mao looked at the black cat that was walking away and mumbled, "It really does understand." Since Zheng Tan felt that Air Mao's chances of success in renting a house were not high, he did not take Air Mao's words to heart. He felt that Air Mao was just saying it to make him angry. On Sunday morning, the Jiao Pa took the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo for a jog. Zheng Tan followed along. When they passed by the school square and saw the only man among the old ladies who were dancing with fans, he suddenly realized that Air Mao might be telling the truth. On the other side of the square, a group of old ladies were waving the fans in their hands. Around them, some students were smiling as they looked over. They were used to seeing old ladies doing fan dances. This was the first time they saw a young man in his 20s doing this. Moreover, he was holding on to that bright red feather fan, and was dancing so well. He was not affected by the people around him at all. This caused a group of old ladies to laugh, especially old Madame Zhai. She was smiling very warmly at Air Mao. After dealing with old Madame Zhai, there was no need to worry about dealing with old man Lan. Zheng Tan had an epiphany. It turned out that Air Mao was a friend of middle-aged and old ladies. It had to be said that Air Mao was really thick-skinned. The group of old ladies seemed to like this kind of shameless person. They felt that the young people nowadays were too shy and could not let go of their pride. As if to prove Zheng Tan's guess, 3 days later, when Zheng Tan passed by the small flower garden, he saw Air Mao working in it. "Teacher Lan, where should I put this pot of flowers?" Air Mao stood there holding the flower pot. Speaking of old man Lan, compared to the title of professor, he was sometimes more inclined to be called teacher. However, most people would call him Professor Lan, or Elder Lan to show their respect. Unfortunately, old man Lan did not necessarily appreciate it. Now that Air Mao had called him that, it was as if he was scratching an itch in his heart. "Put it there, next to the pot of rhododendron reflection." Old man Lan pointed at a place. "What about the pot of Echo Mountain Red?" "Put it there." Looking at Air Mao helping to move the flower pot and dig the soil, Zheng Tan had to admit that Air Mao's goal was almost achieved. Because of this matter, Zheng Tan's mood was really not good recently. On the way back to the courtyard, Zheng Tan walked while thinking about how to mess up Air Mao's matter. Suddenly he heard a childish and crisp voice coming from diagonally in front of him. "Brother He." Chapter 163. Zheng Tan felt that his luck was really bad today. Nothing good happened when he went out. Ignoring the shouts, Zheng Tan was ready to continue running forward. He hoped that it would not. Wah. Sure enough, Zheng Tan stopped. He didn't need to turn around to know that the little kid was crying on the ground again. This trick had been used many times, but Zheng Tan really couldn't resist it. When he heard the crying, he felt a little guilty. After all, the little kid still called him Brother He. After standing in place for a few seconds, Zheng Tan sighed, turned around and looked over there. His gaze swept over the crying child on the ground, and then fell on a woman in her 30s standing next to the child. This woman was obviously the nanny. This woman was obviously closer to the child, but she didn't have the slightest intention of helping the child up. It was really strange for a nanny to be like this. Seeing Zheng Tan looking over, the woman smiled and didn't move. "What are you laughing at?" Zheng Tan pulled his ears and broke a few withered grass on the grass under him with his claws. Then he swung his tail and walked to the crying child on the ground. Come to think of it, little kitten Zhua was almost a year old. Time really flew by. Zheng Tan had met Zhua Kitten several times this month. Zhua Kitten wasn't there. The woman next to Zhua Kitten was looking after her. He heard that Lord Zeng had found her. Lord Zeng was busy with work and couldn't take care of Zhua Kitten often. So the task of taking care of the child was taken over by the woman next to her. Lord Zeng called her Little Wan. Zhua Kitten called her Aunt. In local culture, the word aunt referred to the father's sister. As for Zhua Kitten's father, Zheng Tan knew very well that the biological father wasn't here. Maybe he wouldn't appear in the future. And some of the fathers on registration forms, certificates, and files had already become martyrs. Because Zhua Kitten was involved in the project, Zhua Kitten enjoyed a special protection policy. The name on the column of the father was just the result of this protection policy. It could help Zhua Kitten avoid the people around her. Zheng Tan wasn't sure whether this little Wan nanny was hired by Lord Zeng or sent by the higher-ups. At least until now, Zhua Kitten's growth was quite good. Before little kitten Zhua was born, many people suspected that he had a deformity or a congenital disease. After little kitten Zhua was born, some people suspected that there was a problem with the child's intelligence. But now, Zheng Tan was quite sure that this child's IQ was not low at all. She wasn't even a year old, but her ability to judge people's dishes was getting better and better. If this kind of child was called mentally retarded, then what were the others called? Labrador? Even though he knew that the little lousy child was pretending to cry, Zheng Tan still walked in front of him. As expected, the crying stopped in the next second. If one were to say that he was faking it, this child could really cry. However, as soon as Zheng Tan walked over, this lousy child immediately stopped crying and seemed to be in a good mood. It seemed that it was especially easy for children to use this move. Little kitten Zhua especially liked to use this trick, and it worked every time. Every time, It made Zheng Tan grit his teeth in anger. Brother Black. Little kitten Zhua, who was lying on the ground, called out again. Zheng Tan shook his ears and raised his hand to push little kitten Zhua's head. There was no need for Zheng Tan to do anything else. Little kitten Zhua got up on her own and stood up by holding on to the wooden railing beside her. Little Wan, who was standing at the side, smiled as she watched this scene. She was already used to it. It was like this every time. At first, she was still wary of the black cat, afraid that the cat would stretch out its claws to scratch people. However, when she talked to Little Zhua said not to worry. Later, she tried a few times and found that the cat did not cause any harm to the child, so she stopped guarding against it. Little Wan still remembered that when little kitten Zhua had just started walking, she liked to hold on to the wooden railing beside her to walk a few steps every day. When she saw the black cat, she would lie on the ground and cry. It was useless for her to go over and help her, unless the black cat came over. Later, there was one time when she did not immediately go over to help her. She waited to see how the situation would develop. The child wore thick clothes, and the key parts that were more vulnerable to injury were protected. There was no need to worry about falling and hurting. Moreover, there was only grass around them, so falling to the ground would not hurt. Later, when she saw little kitten Zhua deliberately lying on the ground and pretending to cry, she did not care anymore. Every time Little Wan heard little kitten Zhua call the black cat Brother Black, she wanted to laugh. After that, she learned some things from Little Zhua and relaxed a lot about the black cat. Sometimes, Little Wan could not help but laugh when she saw the black cat waving its two front paws and patting little kitten Zhua's head. That was because the black cat looked like it was waving its paws with great force. In fact, when it landed, it was very light. It was almost just a slight bump, and it always kept its paws well. Seeing little kitten Zhua get up, Zheng Tan did not want to continue wasting time with this little brat. It would be more comfortable to find a quiet place to sleep. After walking for about 10 meters, when they were about to turn a corner, Zheng Tan saw someone coming from that direction. His mood instantly became worse. Black Coal, why are you here? Oh, this can't eat it? I just bought a mixed grain cake. Mao passed the half-eaten biscuit to Zheng Tan as a token gesture, then took it back and continued to gnaw on it. After helping Professor Lon move the flower pots at the small flower bed, Mao felt hungry. He ran to the small stalls and shops at the school gate to buy something to eat. In his hand was a bowl of packed tofu pudding, which he was going to give to Professor Lon later. He did not expect to run into this black cat on the small path. Zheng Tan stopped when he saw Mao. And in the time that Zheng Tan stopped, little kitten Zhua also came over from behind holding onto the railing. As he walked, he called out, "Brother Black." Mao heard the child's voice and looked around. At this time, the students were all in class. Not many people were walking around, let alone on this small path. At this moment, there were only a few people around. Mao looked around but did not see anyone else. Who was the child calling? When little kitten Zhua called out again, Mao almost spat out the mixed grain cake in his mouth. He had already followed the child's gaze and found the corresponding target. Brother Black? This cat. This was the first time he had seen a child call a cat brother. Mao got up and walked over to little kitten Zhua. When he got close, Little Wan stepped forward to block him. Although he was smiling, Little Wan's eyes were obviously alert. Mao raised his hand to show that he understood. He stopped a step away and took out a lollipop from his pocket. It was the kind of lollipop that had a cartoon doll face. "Hey little kid, I have something good. Do you want it?" Mao waved the lollipop in his hand. Zheng Tan looked at him with disdain. What brother? He should be addressed as uncle. Little kitten Zhua pushed Little Wan and took small steps forward, reaching out to take it. Mao pulled back his hand, letting the lollipop go further away. Then he pointed at Zheng Tan, who was squatting beside him, and said to little kitten Zhua, "You tell him that Black Charcoal is an idiot. Brother will give this to you. You can call him an idiot. Just call him an idiot." Little kitten Zhua took a small step forward and continued to reach out, wanting to take the lollipop in Mao's hand. After Mao said it a few times, he realized that it had no effect at all. The child didn't care at all. Forget it. He's just a child. He can't even speak fluently. What does he know? Mao didn't want to continue talking nonsense with the child. He passed the lollipop in his hand to little kitten Joie, and was about to say something. At this moment, a line of water arced through the air and shot towards Mao's shoes. Although Mao reacted quickly and jumped away, his shoes were still sprayed with some urine. F***ck, feigning the east and attacking the west. This must have been planned for a long time, right? Otherwise, how could he urinate so much and so far? Mao looked at the urine on his shoes, and his face contorted. Little Juan held back his laughter, and continued to stand in front of little kitten Joie. Although Mao didn't show any malice, it was always good to be vigilant. After all, they were strangers. Little Juan felt that this young man who looked like a student in his 20s might not be easy to deal with. Little kitten Joie wasn't afraid at all. He didn't think that he had done anything wrong. He held the lollipop in his hand and laughed until his saliva dripped down. Seeing this, Zheng Tan's mood suddenly turned from gloomy to sunny. Good job, little kitten Joie. Mao shook off the urine on his shoes and wiped his sneakers with the paper used to wrap the cereal biscuits. He looked at the small child in front of him with a conflicted expression. Did this brat really not understand what he had just said? This brat and that black cat were actually biological brothers, right? Revenge. This was definitely revenge on him for instigating this kid to scold that cat. This wasn't the end. Little kitten Joie left the wooden railing and walked unsteadily to Zheng Tan. The grass was uneven and little kitten Joie almost fell to the ground. Putting the lollipop in front of Zheng Tan, little kitten Joie looked at Zheng Tan. Mao. F***ck, these two idiots must be biological brothers. Zheng Tan was quite touched. This brat clearly wanted to eat to death, and was drooling a lot faster. Yet he still put the food in front of him. What a good kid. Zheng Tan raised his paw and pushed the lollipop to little kitten Joie's hand, and patted her on the head. This kid was still young. If he grew a little older, Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to pat him anymore. Zheng Tan was very happy that little kitten Joie had helped to anger Mao. He was happy for a few days. Whenever he thought about how little kitten Joie had peed on Mao's foot, he couldn't help but laugh. However, Zheng Tan's good mood only lasted for a week. A week later, Zheng Tan went out to get some fresh air under the sun. When he went downstairs, he noticed that there was a lot of commotion on the third floor. The door to Old Man Land's house was open. The door to the house opposite Old Man Land's house was also open. Old Man Land's voice came from inside. Put it there. Yes, just put it there. You can stay in the master bedroom. I'll make a study for you. The second bedroom will be used to store their things. Zheng Tan was quite curious. After living here for so long, he had only seen this house a few times. Zheng Tan went to the door and looked inside. He saw old Madame Zhai wiping the table with a cloth. Seeing Zheng Tan, old Madame Zhai smiled and said, "Oh, black charcoal is here too. Come in and walk around the house. I saw a mouse just now." Zheng Tan. Forget it. It was better not to go in. Just as he was about to leave, someone came out of the house. Zheng Tan looked up. What the F***ck? Why is this guy here? Mao was wearing a blue uniform. He came out to greet the old madam after hearing her words. Mao waved at the black cat at the door with a proud face. Chapter 164. After the spring rain, the grass seemed to turn green overnight, and the color changed every day. The yellow of winter gradually disappeared, and the flowers bloomed before people were ready. Jiaopa had planned to leave in mid-April, but after receiving a phone call, he decided to leave Chuhua City in advance. He would go to Beijing first, talk with an old professor at Beijing University, and then go abroad together. With the help of the old professor, everything would be much smoother. 2 days before Jiaopa left, he had already arranged the work in the institute. Besides 2 graduate students and a prospective graduate student, there was also a junior student who was going to be Jiaopa's graduate student. All of them were assigned tasks. The student who was going to be submitted was selected by Jiaopa. She was also a girl, and like Zheng Jing, she was not the weak type. Some teachers in the institute joked that Associate Professor Jiao liked to recruit students who looked strong. Besides his students, several family members were also called by Jiaopa to have a private talk, including Zheng Tan. At this moment, Zheng Tan was squatting on the cat tree, seriously listening to Jiaopa's instructions. Don't cause any trouble when I'm not here. Don't think that I don't know anything about my family when I'm abroad. Don't play dumb. I know you can understand. Even if you don't understand everything, you can understand part of it, right? Well, let's make it simple. To sum it up, don't cause any trouble. Of course, just because you don't cause any trouble doesn't mean that you're afraid of trouble. Well, that's not quite right. It was probably the first time that Jiaopa had been away from home for so long. Thinking that he would be separated from his wife, children, and pets for at least a year, the Jiaopa's usual calmness was not much left. And Zheng Tan was the biggest headache for Jiaopa. That guy named Yi Hao we talked, Jiaopa said. Zheng Tan's ears turned to the Jiaopa as he waited for him to continue. However, the Jiaopa did not reveal the contents of their conversation. Instead, he took out a card. It was a card that the Jiaopa had registered with his own identity card. The money on the card was all Zheng Tan's savings. The Jiaopa had also received a thank you gift from Zhao Lu and the others for shooting the commercial, as well as the red packet money that Zhao Lu and the third Master Fong had given to Zheng Tan, which made the Jiaopa's eyes almost pop out of their sockets, as well as the money that Yi Hao had forked out this time. All of these were kept in the Jiaopa's wallet, and had never been touched by it. Here, this is your card. Even your mother doesn't know the details of this card. Now keep it safe. Just put it in this drawer. Let alone Jiao Ma, even Celestine Yi Hao, and the third Master Fong would never have thought that the Jiaopa would put all the money in the card that was prepared for the cats. Now, the money in the card was considered a huge sum of money for some people, but other than the Jiaopa, no one knew where the money was kept. The Jiaopa opened one of the drawers that was connected to the cat tree, and put the card into an unlocked drawer. This drawer was the masterpiece of the third Master Fong. There were 3 small drawers on the cat tree, and if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't notice that there was a key in each drawer. Zheng Tan had hidden the key well, so it was Zheng Tan's private property. As for the card, Zheng Tan was really surprised. He didn't think that the Jiaopa would give him a card. After putting the card away, the Jiaopa patted the cat tree. Do you think that if a thief comes to the house, he or she will find a card hidden in the cat tree? Zheng Tan wagged his tail. No thief would think that there would be precious things hidden in a cat nest, especially in a commoner's house like the Jiao family. After all, this kind of behavior was really crazy in some people's eyes. Zheng Tan deeply felt that normal people wouldn't think in this way. The Jiaopa was silent for a while, then got up and went back to the bedroom. After a while, he came out with a box in his hand. Zheng Tan knew that the box contained the jade pendant that the old woman gave him when he went back to the Jiaopa's hometown during the new year. Zheng Tan didn't wear the jade pendant much. One reason was that it was uncomfortable to wear it, and the other was that it was too eye-catching. It would definitely be stolen when he went out for a walk, so he had been keeping it with the Jiaopa. This is also in the box. Oh, by the way, this is for you to see. The Jiaopa took out another box and opened the lid. Zheng Tan craned his neck and looked at it. There was an artificial amber in the box, and inside it was a cat tooth. It was left by the cat that the Jiaopa once told Zheng Tan that the Jiaopa was indebted to. Zheng Tan looked at it carefully, and thought about the size of his fangs when he looked in the mirror. He had to admit that the tooth in the artificial amber was bigger than Zheng Tan's own. But it was undeniable that it should be a big cat, but definitely not as big as the Monseigneur's size. The Jiaopa just took out the artificial amber to show Zheng Tan, and didn't plan to put it in Zheng Tan's drawer. After giving a few more instructions, the Jiaopa got up and left the room. The Jiaopa left Chu Hua on a Saturday. Jiao Ma drove the 2 children and Zheng Tan to send the Jiaopa to the plane. There was another teacher with the Jiaopa. He was surprised to see the Jiao family send the Jiaopa off with a cat. After boarding the plane, he joked with the Jiaopa. Your family even brought a cat, son. The Jiaopa just smiled and didn't refute. Without the Jiaopa, the Jiao family was much quieter, at least for now. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were very conscientious. They woke up on time, went home, and did their homework. They even helped with the housework. Zheng Tan was still the same as before. He went home on time and would definitely come back at dinner time. The difference was that he rarely went to the Institute of Biological Sciences. The Jiaopa's office was often occupied. Excian and Su Chu didn't have a computer. Without the Jiaopa, these two guys often used the computer in the office to watch TV series and browse casual forums. Speaking of the computer, Zheng Tan had been waiting for a time when there was no one at home to play with it. Early on Monday morning, Zheng Tan immediately ran home after sending little Pomelo to school. He didn't have the mood to do anything else, so he was ready to hit the keyboard. When he got home, Zheng Tan closed the door and rushed into the bedroom to turn on the computer. Jumping on the table and squatting in front of the computer, Zheng Tan waited for the computer to respond. It took a while to turn on the computer, but Zheng Tan wasn't in a hurry. He had time anyway. As for the mouse, Zheng Tan couldn't use one paw, so he used two paws. It looked like he was hugging the mouse. Since he became a cat, this was the first time Zheng Tan went online on his own. He was a little excited. When he hugged the mouse, he didn't control his strength well, and almost threw the mouse away. When it was time to enter the letters, Zheng Tan was too lazy to turn around and use his paws to press the letters. So he could only use his hind legs and tail. It was very awkward and strenuous. He typed the same word wrong several times, but he couldn't believe that the saying "practice makes perfect" would be carried forward by him. With some difficulty controlling the mouse and keyboard, Zheng Tan registered an account on a messaging app. Unfortunately, there was no one in the friend category. In fact, Zheng Tan wanted to look for his original self, but he couldn't remember the account number from back then. Looking at the interface of the messaging app, Zheng Tan was in a daze for a while. Shaking his head, he didn't know if he would have friends in the future. Speaking of which, he couldn't be seen in the light. He could only shout a few words in the virtual world of the internet to liven things up. Zheng Tan didn't dare to download games randomly. It wasn't the right time. He had been waiting to use the computer, but now that he was facing the computer, Zheng Tan didn't know what to do. Yes, Zheng Tan searched the pet forum that Xiaoguo often talked about. The two most active areas in the forum were the cat area and the dog area. In the city, there were the most people who raised these two kinds of pets. Clicking on the category of pet cats, Zheng Tan searched from top to bottom. After a few posts, he found a new picture advertisement that he had taken at Xiaoguo's pet center a few days ago. Zheng Tan looked at the comments below. Sure enough, the appearance of the animals that he had worked with was more likable than Zheng Tan's. What made Zheng Tan feel better was that there were some of his own fans in the forum, most of whom were old people in the forum. Especially when he saw someone saying, "Black Sea is the golden signboard." Zheng Tan was so happy that his tail was sticking up. To reply, he had to register a forum account. Zheng Tan held the mouse and stepped on the keyboard, following the instructions above to register step by step. However, the ID name was a laborious task. What should he call it? He looked at the other people's ID names. Love Cat is Wangkai, Nyonyo Diandian Cat, Miang Meow Under the Eaves, Xianyuan Meow, Domineering Cat, Meow Fox Hellcat. Well, these names were either Meow or Me. At first glance, he knew that they were part of the cat community in the forum. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan typed one key after another. ID. Zheng Tan is a cat. After registering, Zheng Tan shamelessly replied in the post, "That black cat is so King handsome." After thinking about it, Zheng Tan added, "It's so cool." After browsing the web for a while, Zheng Tan erased some traces, turned off the computer, and went downstairs in a good mood. Although he could use the computer, Zheng Tan still liked to walk outside. Of course, if there was no one following behind him, Zheng Tan would be in a better mood. Air Mao slept until 9:30. At this time, the cafeteria was out of food. He went to the stall at the school gate to buy egg pancakes and a boxed lunch. The boxed lunch was saved for when he was hungry. Air Mao was not picky. Even if the food was cold, he could eat it directly. As soon as he entered the courtyard, Air Mao saw Zheng Tan walking out, so he immediately chewed on the egg pancake and followed behind with the boxed lunch that was almost cold. Air Mao was not close to Zheng Tan. It kept a distance of about 10 meters, but Zheng Tan did not succeed in getting rid of it a few times. After a few attempts, Zheng Tan decided to just ignore it. If Air Mao wanted to follow him, then so be it. He walked along the sidewalk. When he reached a wall, Zheng Tan jumped on the wall. Before the Jiaopa left, Zheng Tan stayed in the school. This was the first time he came out recently. This road was still the same as before, and no earth-shattering changes had taken place. When he walked past an intersection, Zhang Tan glanced into a small alley. He saw a black and white cat squatting on a tree of an unknown breed in the alley. What made Zhang Tan stop was not how special the cat looked. The cat was the same as Zhang Tan, an ordinary cat. There was nothing special about its appearance. What made Zhang Tan curious was, what was it looking at? The cat was squatting about 5 meters above the ground. It was staring at the window on the second floor of a house in front of the tree. Chapter 165. Perhaps sensing that Zhang Tan was looking at it, the cat squatting on the tree turned its head to look at the intersection. It looked like a stray cat. Its fur was stained, and there were a few scratches of different lengths above its eyes. The healed wounds left streaks of blood, which were especially eye-catching on its white fur. These wounds were probably from 2 days ago. Zhang Tan didn't know what had caused the cat's wounds, but if the longest wound had been 1 centimeter lower, the cat's left eye would have been destroyed. On the bright side, the cat was still considered lucky. The cat only glanced at the man, and the cat at the intersection. Perhaps it felt that there was no threat. So it continued to stare at the window on the second floor of the house. Mao, who was next to him, took the last bite of the egg pancake and smacked its lips. What is that cat looking at? Is there some kind of harmonious scene inside? Zhang Tan's ears twitched. He didn't want to bother with Mao, so he walked over. As Zhang Tan walked closer, the cat looked at Zhang Tan cautiously. Even if it wasn't staring at Zhang Tan, its ears kept twitching slightly. It was quite alert. Zhang Tan didn't climb up the tree. He walked over just to see what the cat was looking at. Zhang Tan was disappointed. He didn't need to climb up the tree. Zhang Tan could see the situation on the second floor of the house from where he was standing. Because the window on the second floor was closed and covered by the curtains, he couldn't see what was inside the house. Looking at the cat in the tree that continued to stare at the window, and then at the window with the curtains, Zhang Tan shook his head. It was really strange. Zhang Tan didn't stay there to find out. He returned to the intersection and continued walking forward. Mao continued to follow behind him. Mao didn't feel bored. It had never walked this street before, but now it was very interested in the local snacks on this street. Although it was already past breakfast time, many shops and stalls weren't just for breakfast. So Mao bought and ate as it walked. There was a shop that sold green bean pancakes that Mao bought and carried with him. Some of the people on the street were already familiar with Zhang Tan. Some of them even took the initiative to greet Zhang Tan. Although they did not know Zhang Tan's name, they would occasionally say a few words as if it was their own pet, or talk to the people next to them about the black cat, trying to guess whose pet it was. There were many alleys in the old neighborhood. There were many narrow alleys that could only allow 2 or 3 people to walk side by side. These alleys were also filled with all kinds of stories. Zhang Tan had seen many of them after walking on this street for so long. Fighting, extortion, drug abuse, cheating, and so on. There was a wide range of ages, regardless of gender, age, or profession. Perhaps this was also part of the culture of the alleys? Just like at this moment, Zhang Tan's ears twitched as she looked at a narrow alley. There was a concave area in the alley that was used to store rubbish. 2 young men in their early 20s were standing there, talking to the person in the concave area. Zhang Tan listened to the voices and intermittent conversation. He didn't want to meddle in their business. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Mao walk into the alley. Mao didn't walk further in. After taking 2 steps, he leaned against the wall next to him. He carried the things he bought on the way here with one hand and ate a green bean pancake with the other. Zhang Tan jumped onto the wall, ready to see what Mao, this foodie, was going to do. Good Samaritan? The 2 young men had already gotten the money. They counted it and walked out of the alley. When they looked up, they saw a person standing at the entrance of the alley. They put the money in their trouser pockets, looked at each other, and continued to walk out with their hands ready to take out their weapons. Mao wiped the crumbs around his mouth with his thumb and walked in. One of the young men gathered his emotions and was about to say something. Before he could say anything, Mao was already in front of him. The next moment he fell down. He didn't even have time to see how the person in front of him did it. The other young man was about to take out his knife, but before the knife appeared, Zhang Tan heard a soft crack sound. Before the person could finish screaming, His scream stopped abruptly. In just one move, Mao had only used one hand to knock out the two men in the blink of an eye. Zhang Tan looked at the two men lying motionless on the ground and twitched his ears. They were indeed Celestine's juniors. They were really fast. The person who was standing in the concave area of the alley heard the noise and stretched his neck to look out. He happened to meet Mao's gaze, and then the child shrank his head back. He didn't dare to stand out at all. He was probably still praying that Mao wouldn't target him. He didn't want to be the companion of the two men lying on the ground. Mao only glanced at the garbage dump and didn't look at it anymore. Walking to the two men who were lying on the ground, Mao reached out and rummaged through their clothes and trouser pockets. The money he took out totaled up to 1,000 yuan. Then he put all of it into his own pocket, not even sparing a 50-cent coin. He even looked as if he had a clear conscience. Zhang Tan was speechless. What the F***ck? Demon on demon. Alright, Zhang Tan was just wondering if Mao would be righteous and return the money. As expected, he overestimated Mao's character. After putting the money away, Mao patted the dust off his jacket. He didn't look at the two men lying on the ground and the person in the garbage dump. He turned and left, leaving the student who had stuck his head out of the garbage dump to watch the situation in the alley. He stood there with a complicated expression and felt like crying, but no tears came out. After walking out of the alley, Mao looked at the wall and saw the black cat on the wall looking at him with disdain. What? You don't like it? You think I should return the money to that little brat? Mao snorted and said, that kind of brat is obviously not a good person. Maybe he forced the money out of children who were weaker than him. Although Mao's character wasn't good, one had to admit that he was very good at judging people. Of course, maybe this was just Mao's excuse for his behavior. Zhang Tan couldn't be bothered to take it seriously. He only had an impression of the student standing by the garbage dump. He had seen this person and his friends trying to stop Fu Lei. Unfortunately, Fu Lei was a tough nut to crack. The two of them teamed up to stop Fu Lei but failed. Instead, they were beaten up by Fu Lei. This kid's luck wasn't very good. Wasn't there a saying? Sooner or later, you'll have to pay for what you did? Mao's mood didn't change much because of what had just happened. Just like before, Mao looked at the shops and stalls with some curiosity. He went to buy whatever he liked. Zhang Tan walked all the way and passed by Jiao Yuan's school. He stood by the window and looked at it for a while. He was noticed by a few students sitting in the back row. Before the teacher on the podium got angry, Zhang Tan quickly left. Who knew if the teacher on the podium knew Jiao Ma and wouldn't tell on him? So it was better not to stay here any longer. After that, Zhang Tan went to the construction site of Yihao's project to take a look. Mao followed behind. Although it didn't show anything on its face, it had sighed several times in its heart. Especially when it saw the way the people at the construction site looked at Zhang Tan. Mao realized that this cat was really popular. It followed Zhang Tan to familiarize itself with the street. Seeing that Zhang Tan was walking back, Mao didn't plan to stay outside any longer and followed him back. When they passed by the intersection, Zhang Tan looked inside again. The cat on the tree was gone, and the window on the second floor of the house was open. Driven by curiosity, Zhang Tan jumped up the tree and looked inside. There was a man in his 30s wearing a suit and gold-rimmed glasses in the house. At the moment, he was holding a cup of coffee and sitting in front of the window. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing the black cat suddenly jump up the tree, the man was stunned for a moment, and then smiled. Zhang Tan felt that the man's gaze was a bit strange. The smile on his face did not seem strange to other people, but Zhang Tan felt goosebumps all over her body. She felt like there was something strange and contradictory about this man. Zhang Tan's feeling was right. The man still had the same smile on his face, but the hand holding the coffee cup suddenly raised, and the hot coffee in the cup splashed towards Zhang Tan. The tree wasn't far from the house, and some of the branches had already reached the window. Fortunately, Zhang Tan was vigilant and avoided it, but a little bit of coffee still splashed on his back. It wasn't much and he couldn't feel the scalding temperature, but Zhang Tan could smell the coffee. Thinking about what the man on the second floor had done, he was even more unhappy. On the other hand, the man was smiling even more happily because of this. After Zheng Tan ran some distance, when he looked at the window on the second floor again, the man was no longer by the window. He probably went to pour coffee again. Pulling his ears, Zheng Tan glanced around. There was a stone under the tree. Looking at the window on the second floor again, there was still no one. Zheng Tan carefully approached the tree, in case something splashed down from the second floor. When he reached the tree, Zheng Tan pushed the stone further away. Because there was a wall between the tree and the house, it would interfere with Zheng Tan's movements. When he felt that the distance was just right, Zheng Tan reached out 2 front paws to grab the stone, then threw it towards the window on the second floor. I'll let you. Go *CK yourself. The stone hit the glass on the window, and then there was the sound of glass shattering. After throwing the stone, Zheng Tan ran away. When he heard the sound of glass shattering, he felt much better. Although Zheng Tan was very angry just now, it was also because Mao was watching them from the intersection. Therefore, when Zheng Tan threw the stone, she did not stand up and throw it with only one paw like how she would throw a grenade. Instead, she threw the stone with both paws. Although it was still very surprising, it was still better than the former. Mao was surprised, but it didn't say anything. It even gave Zheng Tan a thumbs up. However, Mao wasn't as calm as it looked. What it saw just now was really shocking. Fortunately, Celestine had given it a heads up, and it also had some of its own experiences, so it wasn't too surprised. It also remembered something that its master once said. Revenge is an instinct. It's like that for humans, and it's also like that for cats. On the way back to Tsinghua University, when Zheng Tan passed by a few small shops that were closed, he saw the black and white cat. There was a small gap between the 2 shops. Someone had put a paper box in the gap, and the black and white cat was inside. Next to it was a disposable paper bowl. At the bottom of the bowl were some food that had been there for a few days, and on top of the bowl were some fresh-looking buns. Looking at the cat up close, Zheng Tan always thought that there was a black stain on the cat's nose. Only now did he realize that it was just a pattern on the cat's body. It was shaped like a rice grain. The cat didn't have any obvious hostility towards Zheng Tan and Mao. It was just a little vigilant, especially when Zheng Tan approached the paper bowl. It even let out a low warning sound. Seeing this, Zheng Tan didn't go any closer. However, when Mao took out a box of food that it had bought earlier and leaned over, the cat didn't make a sound. It was just a little vigilant. The box of food was already cold, but the smell of meat still made the cat more energetic. Even so, it didn't eat immediately. It just kept staring at Mao. Mao looked around. Not far away, a small piece of brown crayon was thrown by a child. Mao picked it up and wrote a few words on the paper box. Can catch mice, can guard the house. Please keep me as your pet. Chapter 166. When Zhang Zian returned to Tsinghua University, Mao was still talking to Zheng Tan about the black and white cat that was sleeping in the box. However, even though Zhang Zian had given him food and written his name, Mao had no intention of adopting the cat. Thinking back to the second time he met Mao, Zheng Tan knew that Mao had a complicated relationship with cats. He did not hate them, but he was not close to them either. He was different from Ranqi. Forget it. Let's leave it to fate. Although Zheng Tan really wanted the cat to be adopted, he could not force it. When Zheng Tan was shooting commercials at Xiaoguo's pet center, he would walk around the grassy area around the pet center in his spare time. There were people who brought their pets there for treatment or shopping. One day, when Zheng Tan walked around, he saw a lame old man. He was chatting with his cat friends. He said that he only raised pets based on fate. If he did not like the pet, he would not take it, no matter how precious it was. The cat that the old man adopted had lost one of its hind legs in a car accident. The cat was well taken care of and was very energetic. It could be seen that the man and the cat got along well. Therefore, it was all up to fate. If the man did not like the cat, he would not take good care of it. If the cat did not like the man, it would probably run away from home after a short time. After all, there were not many cats in the world like Li Yuanba, who found their own owners and stayed there. Of course, Monseigneur was also a weirdo to some extent. As he thought about it, Zheng Tan walked down his usual path. This path was slightly different from the one he used to leave the school. It split at a fork in the road. When he left the school, He would take one path and when he returned, he would take another path. That was because Zheng Tan would not return to the eastern courtyard directly at noon after taking a stroll. Every time he came back from outside at noon, Zheng Tan would pass by the International Academic Lecture Hall. This was because there was a large electronic screen outside the International Academic Lecture Hall that showed the time. Inside the school, whether it was the university's teaching building, the school's schedule, or the kindergarten's schedule, they all showed the same time. Therefore, Zheng Tan looked at the time and decided to pick up little Pomelo from the affiliated primary school. "Hey, where are you going?" Mao shouted. Mao, who had already walked a few steps towards the eastern courtyard, turned its head and didn't see Zheng Tan. After looking around, it realized that the cat didn't walk the way it came, so it turned around, carried the bag in its hand, and followed the black cat in that direction. Zheng Tan ignored him. Besides, Zheng Tan couldn't answer. Celestine had told Mao some things about Zheng Tan, but it wasn't very detailed, so Mao couldn't figure out why the cat didn't go home when it was almost time for dinner. It wasn't until it saw the gate of Futong Elementary School and the black cat jumping on the wall next to the gate that it remembered that the cat was going to pick up the child. Mao didn't have anything to do at the moment, and it wasn't ready to eat lunch. It had eaten enough on the street just now, and there was still some food in the bag, so it didn't need to buy a lunchbox. Some parents who lived nearby came to pick up their children. Most of them were very familiar with Zheng Tan and took the initiative to greet him. Zheng Tan ignored them. After all, he was just a cat now, so it wouldn't be considered rude if he didn't respond. After the school bell rang, the children who went home at noon ran out one by one. Little Pomelo saw Zheng Tan and trotted over. She looked at Mao and waited at the gate with Zheng Tan. Mao was puzzled. Who were they waiting for? 6 or 7 minutes later, Jiao Wei ran over. "Sorry, the last class was a little late," Jiao Wei said to little Pomelo, then looked at Mao who was standing next to him. There were no other parents around, and Mao looked unfamiliar. Since they didn't know each other, Jiao Wei didn't plan to take the initiative to talk. He took little Pomelo and walked out of the school gate. "Hey, where are you going?" Mao followed and asked. Jiao Wei looked at Mao in confusion. Who was this person? He looked at little Pomelo and saw that little Pomelo was also confused. It didn't look like it had seen someone familiar. "You are?" Jiao Wei asked. "I live downstairs from her house on the 3rd floor. I just moved here. My surname is Wang." Mao introduced himself very seriously. He thought for a moment, then pointed at the black cat who was squatting on the wall and watching the show. "I'm more familiar with this guy." Zheng Tan pulled his ear. "Familiar my ass." Unexpectedly, Jiao Wei had a look of realization. "Oh," he said. "So you know each other." Not to mention Jiao Wei, little Pomelo also lowered her guard around Mao. This made Mao even more surprised. He didn't expect that it would be so effective to build a relationship with a cat. This cat's reputation was greater than a human's. Jiao Wei also introduced himself briefly, then smiled at Mao and said, "Brother Wang, let's go out together. Lunch is on me. Don't be shy. It's my own shop. If you like it, we can go there again next time." Mao didn't refuse. "Okay, I'll go check it out first." During lunch, Mao chatted with Jiao Wei. They talked about Celestine. "So you're Brother Ling's friend. Sorry for the disrespect." Jiao Wei picked up some things from the past and said, "At that time, it was all thanks to black charcoal that I asked Brother Ling for help. Otherwise, my shop wouldn't have been so successful." Mao muttered in his heart. No wonder this kid looked at the black cat strangely. It didn't look like he was looking at a pet at all. It turned out that there was such a thing. Thinking of this, Mao waved his hand. "This is nothing. Celestine is my senior. He's not here often. I'll help you. If you have any trouble, just call me. I'm good at fighting." Jiao Wei's mouth twitched. When they left the small restaurant, Mao left 2 bags of snacks in the shop. Although Jiao Wei's parents had been here for half a year, they had only been to the old street less than 3 times. It was impossible for them to have time to go there often. Some of the snacks were really uneaten. In the afternoon, after sending little Pomelo to school, Zheng Tan returned home. To be safe, Zheng Tan locked the door. He turned on the computer entered the password, and went online. After browsing the web for a while and reading all kinds of gossip, Zheng Tan logged into the pet website. Originally, Zheng Tan wanted to see the post that reposted the picture he took to satisfy his vanity. However, after opening it, he found that the hottest post was about a recent cat abuse incident. There were some pictures in the post. A 20-year-old college student was next to him. A cat was lying on the ground. The cat's eyes were still bleeding, and there were many wounds on its body. The following pictures were all about the student and the dead cat on the ground. Some were taken at close range, and some were taken from various angles. Zheng Tan felt a chill down his spine. It was like watching a horror movie. If Zheng Tan was still a human, these pictures would not have made him feel this way. But now he was a cat. He had been through the experience of cat traffickers and cat meat restaurants. The experience was too deep. When he connected these pictures to these pictures, the visual and psychological impact was too great. Even the scene of the tattooed man throwing the kitten in the old building district wasn't so bloody. The student in the picture didn't look like the evil people on TV. Zheng Tan continued to read the introduction of the student. He was from a well-known university in another province. He was a top student. His father was a big boss, and his mother was also a senior executive. Famous university, top student, cat abuse. These words seemed very incongruous when put together, but this was the truth. Moreover, there were already more than 10 cats that had died in the hands of this student. Maybe more. The student said that he couldn't remember clearly. Zheng Tan never knew that in addition to those scumbags like the tattooed man, there would be such a top student who abused animals. Instead of continuing to look at the pictures that affected his mood, Zheng Tan continued to read the replies of the netizens. F*CK, this is so F*King cruel. What top student? Character has nothing to do with education. Drag him out and shoot him 100 times. Now, in addition to guarding against cat traffickers, we also have to guard against those who adopt cats with ill intentions. Don't do bad things with good intentions. It's too late to regret if you entrust the cats to those who make promises, but speak like farts. Recently, I suddenly found that there are fewer cats near my house. I thought it was because of cat traffickers. Could it be that some pervert caught them and abused them? Where did so many perverts come from? Don't scare yourself. The most important thing is to take care of your cats, especially those who are free-range. You have to pay more attention to them. From the perspective of a previous human, Zheng Tan certainly wouldn't care about this matter. With Zheng Tan's character, he was too lazy to care about this kind of thing, let alone argue with people on the internet. But now, this feeling was very complicated. A netizen with the ID Grumpy Cat commented, "The reason for growing up. The father's indifference. The mother of a career-oriented woman doesn't have time to care. From a psychological point of view, indifference is worse than violence in a family relationship. It means that your existence is worthless. In the process of being ignored, children can easily learn to ignore other people's feelings." A netizen with the ID Cat made Xiao AI commented, "Some people give a very different feeling outside and at home. On the outside, they appear to be passive and obedient, but on the inside, they are full of hostility and aggression. In front of the leaders, they flatter and cater to them, but suppress their true feelings, so the inner conflicts and contradictions are very strong. When they use violence or other extreme means in the face of vulnerable groups, it doesn't simply mean that they are dissatisfied with the performance of the victims of violence or abuse, but it is a behavior that is caused by multiple layers of pressure and anger superimposed together." This was a relatively rational analysis. The more he read, the more intense the argument became. Zheng Tan turned 2 pages. Can't they accumulate some good karma? What's the point of talking about karma with animals? Karma has long been exhausted. Everyone calm down. Your cat's eyeballs were dug out and beaten to death. How can you bear it? Aren't these all stray cats? Stray cats can be killed indiscriminately? Doesn't it count as killing the innocent? He's not wrong. At least legally he's fine. Poor stray cat. We can't abuse people like we abuse cats. Since he has decided to repent, everyone should give him a chance, instead of creating pressure for him and leading social groups to exclude and scold him. This will destroy him. This is so F***king funny. Will he really change just because he says he will? There's a good saying, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Upstairs, you're slandering me. The post was quickly refreshed to 10 pages. Zheng Tan roughly looked at the posts on the next few pages. The posts that started the war of words were not so elegant. They even began to greet the ancestors. Some people were strongly condemning. Since the law could not punish, they used social morality and public opinion to put pressure. Another group of people felt that it was just cat abuse, not murder. Since the student admitted his mistake and decided to repent, everyone should forgive him. Why should they destroy a person for a few cats? Of course, in the cat area forum, there were more people in the front. Most of the people in the back were not actually from the cat area forum, but from other areas. Zheng Tan looked at the replies and thought of the black and white cat that was nestled in the paper box with injuries on its body. Perhaps it had also been abused, but it was luckier. At least it was still alive. In fact, Zheng Tan knew that no matter how much they quarreled now, the standards for humans and cats would always be different. This was inevitable. After a few years, the elite would still be the elite, and the abused cats would no longer be there. In terms of the racial concept, society was always more tolerant of people, especially those who were successful in their careers when they were young. In the end, they still lived in a gorgeous world where they were surrounded by stars. If Zheng Tan was still human, he would definitely not think so much. But now his heart was filled with panic. When he came back to his senses, Zheng Tan refreshed the web page and found that the number of replies to this post had already reached 15 pages. The war of words was still escalating. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan raised his paw and dragged the mouse. He clicked on the reply button and typed a sentence. Chapter 167. In the cat forum, there were many people who often joked about cats, so Zheng Tan's reply didn't make the other netizens feel anything special. Zheng Tan's reply was quickly drowned out by the quarreling replies. Even if someone saw this sentence while scrolling through the post, they wouldn't have much of an impression of this sentence that didn't seem to have much meaning. Zheng Tan didn't intend to get any opinions from other people. He turned off his computer and went to sleep on the balcony. A day later, when Zheng Tan opened the forum again, the post had been deleted. There were many other posts in the forum. After skimming through them, Zheng Tan wasn't in the mood to continue reading. Since it was still early, he was going to see the black and white cat. Today, without Air Mao, Zheng Tan felt much more at ease. When he passed by the box, Zheng Tan didn't see the black and white cat. Air Mao's lunch box had been finished, and there were some leftovers in the paper bowl in front of the box. There were many fish bones in the rice, and because of the weather, there was a rancid smell in the paper bowl. After looking around carefully and confirming that the black and white cat wasn't there, Zheng Tan ran towards the alley. In the alley, the black and white cat wasn't on the tree. The window on the second floor of the house next to it was still closed. There didn't seem to be anything special. As he approached the house, Zheng Tan pricked up his ears and listened. He didn't hear any sound from the house, and there was no sound of people talking. It looked like the houses in the neighborhood. At this time, people who were working or going to school weren't at home, so it was much quieter. Only the chirping of the sparrows could be heard. Zheng Tan didn't find anything, so he prepared to jump down the tree and leave. After taking 2 steps, Zheng Tan suddenly looked back at the sparrows jumping on the wall not far away. There were too many of them. Upon closer inspection, Zheng Tan realized that the number of sparrows in the area had increased without him noticing. Sparrows were very common in the city, especially in the area around the school where there was a large green forest. Zheng Tan had been walking on this street for more than half a year. He didn't know this street like the back of his hand, but he knew some things very well. For example, there were originally a lot of cats around here, and they were basically free range. The result of more cats was fewer birds. Zheng Tan had seen the cats around here catch sparrows several times before. He hadn't seen so many sparrows around here before. Now these sparrows looked quite leisurely. When Zheng Tan came out for walks, he didn't see many cats. Winter was over, and there were a lot of active cats at Tsinghua University at night. The residents around here might also think that since the new year had just passed, they were probably taken away by cat trappers. After all, Cats used to go missing during the new year. Others didn't know, but Zheng Tan knew that ever since he was taken away by cat traffickers, Celestine, Yi Hao, and the third Master Fong had all intervened. Although it wasn't that there were no cat trappers in Chuhua, it was much less than in the past few years. Was it such a coincidence that cat traffickers made their move around here? Zheng Tan recalled the replies he saw when he was browsing the forum. There were many possibilities why there were suddenly fewer cats around, but Zheng Tan didn't want it to be the one he guessed. He looked up at the house. Why did the black and white cat keep staring at that house? Was it curious? Or was it hatred? Unable to think of an answer, Zheng Tan decided to find it himself. Jumping on the wall, Zheng Tan looked at the layout of the house. The side of the house faced the wall, and the door was closed. The house had a small yard, probably only 7 or 8 square meters. Nearly 2/3 of the yard was a flower bed that was higher than the ground. There weren't many flowers in the flower bed, and the soil in many places had been turned over. The only place that hadn't been moved was the 2-meter-tall tree in the middle of the yard. It was of an unknown species. However, the branches of the tree were bare, and there were no signs of sprouting. There was no green at all, and he didn't know if it was dead or alive. The back door of the house was closed, and there was a very strange smell in the small yard. Zheng Tan sniffed. He couldn't tell what it was, but it didn't feel good. Jumping down from the wall, he didn't land on the flower bed. This flower bed always gave Zheng Tan a creepy feeling. The temperature had obviously risen, and the weather was clear. It was rare to see the blue sky, and it should have given people a fresh and refreshing impression. However, standing in the yard, Zheng Tan felt a little cold. Gusts of wind blew, forming a whirlpool in the yard. On the ground, thin pieces of plastic paper that came out of nowhere were lifted up by the wind. They floated in a circle and then fell down. Some of the hair on Zheng Tan's body was also blown by the wind. It was completely different from the usual leisurely feeling of sunbathing. Instead, Zheng Tan felt that every strand of hair was transmitted through the nerves under his skin, and the subtle feeling was transmitted through the nerves under his skin. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the wall, startling Zheng Tan. He turned his head and saw that it was the black and white cat. Seeing Zheng Tan here, the cat was also surprised. It hesitated on the wall before jumping down. Unlike Zheng Tan, it landed on the flower bed. Seeing that the black and white cat was vigilantly staring at him, Zheng Tan took a few steps back. He didn't plan to fight with the cat here. Perhaps it felt that Zheng Tan was no longer a threat. After looking at Zheng Tan a few times, the cat sniffed around the flower bed. It found a spot and then began to dig with its claws. What was buried in there? Zheng Tan was curious, but his intuition told him that there was definitely not a beautiful scene under the soil. Perhaps it was buried a little deep. Fortunately, the soil in the flower bed wasn't solid. After digging for about 5 minutes, the cat stopped, sniffed there, and then continued digging. There was nothing around for Zheng Tan to stand on to see the situation in the flower bed. Since no one was paying attention, Zheng Tan stood up and used his 2 hind legs to support himself. The cat had dug a hole in the flower bed. In the hole, Zheng Tan saw a cat's foot exposed. The rest of the foot was still buried in the soil. Although there was soil stuck to it, Zheng Tan could still see some black lines crisscrossing the sole of the foot. It looked like it was burned. The cat was still digging. Zheng Tan didn't want to look anymore. He was sure that there was definitely more than one cat buried in there. Sometimes cats were more vengeful than dogs. Zheng Tan didn't know what the cat buried in the flower bed had to do with the cat, but the cat remembered this grudge. Otherwise, it wouldn't have squatted on the tree for so long. At that time, Zheng Tan couldn't see the cat's eyes when it squatted on the tree and stared at the house. It could be hatred, or it could be something else. Without looking at the flower bed, Zheng Tan jumped onto the window at the back door of the house. The window was still closed. Inside was the kitchen. Zheng Tan stood on the windowsill. Looking through the transparent glass window, he saw something on the ground inside. Zheng Tan was very familiar with this thing. Every time he saw this thing, Zheng Tan was quite angry. F***ck, a cat cage. Whenever she saw the cat trap, Zheng Tan would recall the unpleasant experience she had in the past. A cat cage wasn't difficult to make. Anyone who was familiar with rat cages could make one themselves. However, Suddenly seeing a cat cage in a clean kitchen made him feel a little out of place. Why would such a thing exist in a seemingly elite family? All of this made Jung Tan certain that the guy with the lousy coffee was really not a good person. In the backyard, the windows were closed very well. The ventilation area was blocked by barbed wire. Other than this, the windows on the first floor were basically all protected by anti-theft nets. Jung Tan couldn't find a place to enter. Since there was no chance on the first floor, he would look for it on the second floor. Jumping onto the wall, Jung Tan walked around and finally found a small window on the side of the wall. The glass window was half open, and the other half was blocked by a screen. However, the screen could only block insects, not cats. Jung Tan estimated the distance from the wall to the other side. He tiptoed and kicked his hind legs to jump over. Jung Tan had mastered the skill of jumping over walls and windows. Therefore, Jung Tan was very confident in this jump. However, the small window looked quite ordinary, but when Jung Tan put his paws on it, he found that it was slippery. If it wasn't for his quick reaction to kick a few times on the wall and hook his front paws on the metal net on the screen window, he might have fallen. Falling from the second floor wasn't a big deal for a cat. However, the gap between the house and the wall was a drainage ditch. Originally, there were some stone slabs above the drainage ditch. However, the stone slab facing the window wasn't where it should be. Someone had moved it to the side. Climbing onto the narrow windowsill, Jung Tan stood firmly on the screen window. He looked at the drainage ditch below and cursed the person who moved the stone slab away. That was close. He almost fell. Although falling from the second floor wasn't a big deal, if he fell into the drainage ditch, he would probably get wet. Moreover, it would be full of smelly water. Maybe someone would pee and spit in it. Moving his gaze back, Jung Tan looked at the narrow windowsill again. Different from what it looked like, the windowsill was covered with a layer of smooth hard material. It also had a slight downward curve. It was easy for a cat's paws to slip on it. Fortunately, Jung Tan's paws were slightly harder and stronger, so he had a chance to climb up. Otherwise, he would have slipped down. Pulling open the screen window, Jung Tan looked inside. It was a bathroom. At this time, it was considered modern and very clean. This made Jung Tan wonder if the owner of the house was a clean freak. Coming to the bathroom door, Jung Tan listened carefully to the movement at the door. He didn't hear any footsteps or voices. Jumping up and turning the handle of the bathroom door, Jung Tan walked out. Knowing that the owner of the house was abusing cats, Jung Tan had to be careful. He didn't want to be careless like when he jumped out of the window. The house was tidy. This person's life was obviously different from the tattooed man. There were no cameras around. The living room was clear at a glance. There were 3 rooms, but unfortunately, all of them were locked. Jung Tan couldn't get in at all. After walking around and finding nothing, Jung Tan went back along the original route. In the yard, the cat was no longer there. The hole in the flower bed had been filled again. However, it was just a cat. Unlike Jung Tan, it couldn't be more detailed. Many places were just filled with a layer of soil. The hole could still be seen. Jung Tan helped to fill in the hole. Back at Tsinghua University, everything was as usual. After sending little Pomelo to school in the afternoon, Jung Tan prepared to go back to the internet and watch some movies. Hey Black Charcoal, I'm so happy to see you. Help me open the door. I forgot to bring the key. Air Mao was carrying a lunchbox and a few bags. He stood at the door downstairs. At this time, he didn't see anyone coming in or out of the building. He was waiting for Jung Tan. Since he didn't plan to go out for a walk, the cat tag hanging around Jung Tan's neck wasn't hidden on the tree. Looking at the person who had just eaten his first meal of the day, he jumped up and swiped the access card. Jung Tan went upstairs in front of Air Mao. Just as he passed the 3rd floor, Jung Tan suddenly realized that Air Mao didn't even bring the access card. Did he have the key? So Jung Tan, who had already walked to the corner between the 3rd and 4th floor, stopped and looked over there. In front of the door, Air Mao put the things in his hands aside and dug into his pockets. He didn't take out the key. Instead, he took out an iron ring. The iron ring wasn't closed. It was made of iron wire. Air Mao broke the iron wire into a cross and inserted it into the keyhole. Jung Tan was shocked. Pick the lock? F***CK. Chapter 168. There was no lock on the metal door, only a wooden door. The wooden door was a relatively common lock, so it was no challenge for Air Mao. Zheng Tan did not know how long Air Mao took to unlock the door. He just felt that before he could figure out the reason, the door was already open, and the lock was still intact. In the past, Zheng Tan had only heard of things like master keys. This was the first time she had seen someone use a piece of iron wire to open a door. Before this, she had thought that these things only existed in legends. The saying that masters were among the people was not wrong at all. Air Mao had bought a lot of things when he went shopping. There were biscuits, instant noodles, fish balls, shrimp dumplings, and other frozen food. This guy only cooked instant noodles and dumplings in the kitchen. He wasn't good at anything else and was too lazy to cook. After opening the door, Air Mao first took some unsealed food in. There were too many things, so they would scatter when he put them down. It was not easy to take them all at once. Anyway, it was in front of his house, so Air Mao wasn't afraid that someone would take it away. "Hey, take your cat's paw away. Don't open my things." After saying that, Air Mao took the things in. Zheng Tan pulled his ear and sniffed the plastic bag with the supermarket's name printed on it. The more Air Mao said not to touch it, the more Zheng Tan wanted to touch it. He opened the plastic bag and flipped through the 2 bags of fish balls. They were too cold, so he wasn't interested in the things inside. Zheng Tan didn't pay attention to the things in the bags anymore. He walked into the house and watched as Air Mao put the first batch of things away, and went out to take the rest. Just then, Zheng Tan jumped up and pushed the door open. Bang! The door closed. Air Mao, who was locked outside, was stunned. F***ck. Air Mao wanted to swear but was afraid of disturbing Professor Lan next door. He cursed in a low voice, put down the bag in his hand, and took out the wire to open the door. Zheng Tan looked at the clock hanging in the living room, counting the time it took Air Mao to unlock the door. From the time the door was closed to when Air Mao opened the door with the wire, it took less than 10 seconds. That meant that the time it took him to unlock the door was even shorter, probably less than 5 seconds. It seemed that Air Mao was a habitual offender. He was quite skilled. Air Mao came in with a bag, cursing. Zheng Tan turned a deaf ear to his words. Zheng Tan really wanted to learn the skill of picking locks, but cat claws were too weak and inflexible, so the difficulty of picking locks was quite high. Air Mao tidied up everything and sat in the living room, watching TV and eating his lunchbox. Zheng Tan squatted on the chair beside him and stared at Air Mao's iron wire pocket. He was thinking about how to trick Air Mao into helping him. Being stared at like this, Air Mao found it hard to ignore. The cat in front of him didn't seem to want to eat the food in his bowl. If it wanted to eat, it would have already started barking. "What are you looking at?" Air Mao was chewing rice. A grain of rice was stuck to his chin. This. Following Zheng Tan's line of sight, Air Mao took out the iron wire from his pocket. The iron wire was already placed around the city wall. Air Mao seemed to have found someone to show off to. "What's wrong? Do you admire my lock-picking skills? Hey, this kind of lock can be opened with just an iron wire." Air Mao bragged for a while, his saliva flying everywhere. Zheng Tan stepped back in disgust. "Have you heard of tinfoil picking? Someone said that a piece of tinfoil can open the locks of an entire neighborhood. Although it's a bit exaggerated, tinfoil is indeed a good tool. Also, different locks may look similar, but they may require different tools to open. Here." Air Mao took out a small leather bag from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Hey, this is my treasure bag. With this, I can open most of the locks in the school, not to mention all the locks in the school, except for the electronic locks." Zheng Tan was just thinking that this guy wasn't invincible when Air Mao added another sentence. "There's another set of tools for the electronic lock. Unfortunately, I didn't bring it with me." Zheng Tan was speechless. What exactly did Wei Ling's junior brother do in the past? Did he have a black file or something? Tell the Jiao family to stay away from this guy in the future. He didn't know where Air Mao learned these things, but he had to admit that this guy was a talent in some ways. However, this kind of talent was not a good role model. It was easier to label him as a bad guy. However, for Zheng Tan, there was no absolute standard for judging a bad guy. If he could help him, he was a good guy. After Air Mao finished eating, he was about to lie down on the bed to sleep. Just as he lay down, Zhang Tan grabbed his sleeve and dragged him out. His cashmere sweater was hooked up. I'm warning you, don't go overboard. Mao covered himself with the blanket. Zhang Tan looked around. There was an empty mineral water bottle on the ground. There was no cap. Kaka 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 kaka. The sound of plastic bottles being stepped on could be heard. Zhang Tan stood on the plastic bottle and jumped up and down. The sound was as loud as it could be. F***ck. Mao lifted the blanket and looked at Zhang Tan with a bad expression. Then he realized that the black cat was staring at his jacket. He took out the iron ring from his pocket and threw it at Zhang Tan. Mao was about to lie down on the bed and continue to sleep. Just as he climbed onto the bed, Mao's hand that was scratching his hair suddenly paused. He thought of something and turned to the black cat that was squatting beside the plastic bottle. You want to open the lock? Zhang Tan stared at him. He thought to himself, should I nod now? If yes, wave your tail vertically. If no, wave your tail horizontally. Mao continued. Zhang Tan wagged his tail vertically. However, he felt that Mao's words were too smooth. It was as if he often said these words. As if it was a matter of course. This was not normal. Normal people would not say these words to a cat directly. He was not familiar with Zhang Tan. If it was Jiao Pa, Celestine or Fong San, it would be understandable. After receiving an affirmative answer, Mao sat up straight and was suddenly energized. Whose door are we going to open? It better not be someone from this compound. Otherwise, it will be awkward the next time we meet. Oh, it better be a little challenging. Otherwise, it will be boring. Zhang Tan. F***ck, this guy is so enthusiastic. Mao quickly put on his clothes. Before leaving, he twirled his hair in front of the mirror and styled himself. He rubbed his hands. Okay, let's go. Zhang Tan led the way in front, and Mao followed behind. He did not know if Zhang Tan was overthinking, but he felt that Mao seemed to be especially energetic at this time. It was more energetic than the previous few times he had seen it. When they passed by the carton, the black and white cat was squatting next to it and eating. Sensing Zhang Tan and Mao's approach, the cat raised its head and glanced at them before continuing to eat. After the temperature rose, some of the food became rancid easily. However, it was different from the morning. The bowl was filled with fresh food again. It was still leftovers, but it was still relatively fresh. The fish head was picked and eaten, followed by the rice. The fish bones were thrown aside. Zhang Tan did not continue to disturb it, and left after taking a look. He brought Mao to the tree in the small alley. Zhang Tan looked at the tightly shut window, jumped up the tree, and climbed higher to see the situation on the other side of the wall. It was similar to the morning. It seemed that the man did not return at noon. So it's this place. You still hold a grudge? Mao interpreted Zhang Tan's behavior as revenge for the coffee spilled last time. Zhang Tan jumped up the wall and walked to the small yard. Mao followed him outside and looked around from time to time. Fortunately, there were not many residents around at this time. Mao followed Zhang Tan over the wall and landed in the yard. It did not step on the flower bed, but chose a relatively clean place. This way, its shoes would not be stained with mud, and it would not easily leave footprints when entering the house. The lock on the back door of the house was slightly more complicated than the lock on the door of the old house in the eastern compound. However, Mao had brought some tools and opened the door quickly. The layout of the first floor was relatively simple. There was also a gym. Those who could afford such equipment were considered to be in good condition in the area. Mao also saw the cat cage in the kitchen. It just frowned and did not say anything. As for what it was thinking, Zhang Tan did not know. When they came to the second floor, there were 3 closed doors. Zhang Tan did not care which one to open first. Since the man abused cats, and there were no other suspicious items on the first floor except for the cat cage, it must be in the 3 locked rooms on the second floor. He just had to wait for Mao's performance. Mao did not feel nervous about illegally entering someone's house at all. At the same time, it did not have the excitement and liveliness that it had when it first came. It looked quite calm, and its behavior was very natural. Mao did not immediately take out the tools to open the door. Instead, it walked around the second floor and looked at the doors one by one. This should be the bedroom. This is the study. As for this, I don't know. Let's open this first. The lock of this room is also more complicated. It should give us a surprise. Zheng Tan did not know how Mao determined which room was used for what, but it seemed to be quite professional. Although the lock of this room was a little complicated, it did not take too long for Mao to come prepared. After fixing the lock, Mao pushed the door open a gap and looked inside. The door was a little thick. Zheng Tan felt that it could be used as a security door outside, but it was just a door to a room here. After making sure that there was no one inside, Mao opened the door and walked in. The sound insulation in the room should be very good. The chirping of the sparrows outside could not be heard at all. The room could be seen at a glance. There was a desk on one side, and there were some simple decorations on the desk. And on the opposite side of this office desk was... Mao walked over and pulled open the cloth curtain, revealing the object that was blocking it. It was about 1.5 meters long, close to 1 meter wide, and close to 2 meters tall. One side was transparent, and there was a layer of tempered glass facing the desk. The person sitting at the desk could clearly see the inside of the object. At first glance, Zheng Tan did not know what the object was used for. He even thought that it was some kind of bathroom. But seeing that Mao's expression was not right, Zheng Tan climbed onto Mao's shoulder and looked inside. I saw this thing on TV when I was young. This is just a simplified version. But I really did not expect that there would be people in this place who would make this in their own home. Mao said in a low voice. There is a dish called roast duck feet. It is to put a live duck on a slightly hot iron plate, and then heat up the iron plate with seasoning. The duck moves on the iron plate because of the heat. In the end, the duck feet are cooked, but the duck is still alive. This is similar to this. Zheng Tan's eyes looked through the transparent tempered glass and stopped at a layer of metal net at the bottom of the object. It turned out that the burns on the cat's feet came from this. Mao looked around the room and then walked to the window. The window in the room seemed to have not been opened for a long time. The thick curtain completely blocked the light outside. Mao found a suitable place and took out a miniature camera that was only half the size of a pinky finger and installed it. Chapter 169. This room gave Zheng Tan the feeling that there was no surprise, but rather a great shock. He shuddered at the thought of the roast duck's feet that Mao had mentioned. After installing the camera, Zheng Tan and Mao left the room and went to the other two rooms. The curtains in the bedroom and the study were well covered. There were some work-related documents in the bedroom and a few locked cabinets. Mao was not very interested in them. As for the study, there was a desktop computer with a password set. Mao was not that skilled and did not bring the relevant tools. However, Mao also placed a camera in an inconspicuous place on the bookshelf. This person is either too cautious or timid. He doesn't dare to let others know what he is doing. Even the curtains are covered so well. Or maybe he has a dark mind, Mao muttered. Zheng Tan did not smell the cat in these two rooms, or maybe it was covered by the air freshener sprayed. After Mao installed the camera, the man and the cat cleaned up some traces and prepared to leave. When they went out the back door, the black and white cat was squatting on the wall looking at Zheng Tan and Mao. It was not very vigilant but more curious. It also felt a little closer to Mao. It remembered that this person had given it food, and the food was very delicious. Back in the eastern courtyard, Mao had just stepped into the house when Zheng Tan squeezed in. He wanted to see what Mao was going to do next. Unfortunately, Mao did not intend to let Zheng Tan watch. Mao tried to chase Zheng Tan away, but was ignored. Seeing that Zheng Tan had no intention of leaving, Mao closed the door, dragged a chair and sat down. Its line of sight was almost at the same level as Zheng Tan, who was standing on the table. I say, Black Coal, our country's animal protection laws are not perfect, and there are no clear laws against killing cats. Otherwise, why do you think those cat and dog meat restaurants can be so popular? However, killing cats is different from abusing cats. The only way to deal with cat and dog abusers is to condemn them. Of course, if condemnation is useful, your cat's standard of living will probably be improved. Unfortunately, it is useless. Mao made a helpless gesture. But these days, sons compete with their fathers and pets compete with their owners. If your cat daddy can increase his influence, you can show off everywhere. Air Mao seemed to be explaining to Zheng Tan, and convincing himself at the same time. Well, look at the guy we met. Even if you go and sue him, you won't get any results. Even if you throw him into the police station, he will still be able to come out. At most, he will receive a light punishment. If we were to talk about the law, what I did was more serious than him killing and abusing cats. Moreover, not to mention the whole country, even in Chuhua City, there was definitely more than one cat abuser. Perhaps there were more people who adopted more intense methods. You and I don't know who those people are, but we have to create some pressure to make them restrain themselves. There might be relevant laws in a few years, but in the current situation, because there is no law to rely on, the law enforcement department can't intervene, and the main force is only the civil society. So it's better to think of other ways to make him restless. It's best to make a big fuss and attract the attention of society. Air Mao said seriously. Like my grandfather said, the eyes of the masses are bright, and the power of the masses is limitless. We have to believe in the masses and rely on the masses. If Air Mao's grandfather knew that Air Mao used this sentence in this context, who knew what he would think? Seeing the black cat on the table tilting its head slightly and lowering its eyelids as if it was thinking, Air Mao raised its hand and pushed it. Go back first, I will take care of this. Go, I want to sleep. Don't think about stepping on plastic bottles next to my bed. Zheng Tan was pushed off the table and chased out. He squatted at the door and continued to think about the things that he had not finished thinking about before he went upstairs. Zheng Tan had always been curious about what Air Mao had done. Unfortunately, when he went downstairs and upstairs again, he did not see Air Mao. Zheng Tan did not have the skill to pick locks, so he could only wait. The next day, when Zheng Tan went online to the forum when no one was at home, he saw a hot post on the front page. It was from the cat section. Because the discussion was too hot, it was pushed to the front page. Zheng Tan clicked in to take a look. The title of the post was not long. Cat abuser scum again. The poster was a guy with the ID, all the good names have been taken by cats. It was a detailed and emotional description of what he had seen, heard, and felt. The description of the matter was clear, and the rendering was strong enough. Coupled with the pictures, it was impossible for the post not to explode with noise. In addition, there was a top student who abused cats some time ago. And now there was another social elite who abused cats, adding fuel to the fire. The pictures in the post were all familiar to Zheng Tan. The familiar flower bed, the familiar cat's paw with burns and mud, the familiar object. Only the person in the post was censored. The specific name was not mentioned. Only the surname was written in the form of X. Zheng Tan's computer skills were not very good. In the past, he only knew how to watch movies and play games on the internet. He did not learn any other high-end technology, so now Zheng Tan did not know the IP address of all the good names have been taken by cats. He could only see the registration time of this person. The registration time showed that it was 3 years ago. As for the poster, it was either Air Mao or someone that Air Mao knew. As he continued to scroll down the post, he found that one after another people revealed the occupation and residential address of the person in the picture. They either heard it from a friend or found out about it through some channels. Someone also mentioned the Chuhua Morning Post. This year, the Jiao family did not subscribe to the Chuhua Morning Post, so Zheng Tan did not know what was reported in the newspaper. However, according to what the netizen said, it seemed that the Chuhua Morning Post only mentioned it slightly. It was not very specific, and it sounded like a small piece of news that would not attract attention. It seemed that the power was not strong enough. Or did Air Mao have a backup plan? He always felt that the guy would not end things so simply. Zheng Tan scrolled forward and carefully looked at the original post. A few of the pictures in the post were about the object. In the pictures, the metal net at the bottom of the object was connected to a certain voltage, and the cat that was locked inside jumped up high. When the cat's feet stepped on the metal net, there would be electric sparks. Zheng Tan had seen the cat in the picture before. It was one of the cats in the surrounding area. He did not know what the cat's owner would do if he knew the truth. In addition to the pictures that showed evidence of cat abuse, the post also listed an example of a violent cat that had been punished in the past. It told everyone to think twice before you act. As for how to think twice before you act, the post did not mention a word about it. Many people had already understood and began to think about how to play the game. Maybe this post was just a temporary post. Before this, if it were up to Zheng Tan, it would have been better to solve it directly, just like how he had scared the tattooed man. But now, what did Mao want to do? Did it really want to make a big deal out of it? During lunchtime, when Zheng Tan followed little Pomelo upstairs, he saw Mao coming back with a thermos lunchbox. He stopped at the door of the third floor and stared at it. He did not continue to follow little Pomelo upstairs. I'll take you to watch a show tomorrow morning. Don't sleep in. Mao did not wait for Zheng Tan to respond and slammed the door. Watch a show? Sure enough, there was a backup plan. The next day, Zheng Tan woke up early. As usual, he had to send little Pomelo to school. It was rare to see Mao yawning when he went downstairs. This guy usually slept until noon, so it was rare for him to wake up early like this. After sending little Pomelo to school, Zheng Tan followed Mao to the old street. There was a rice noodle restaurant not far from that person's house. Mao sat there and ate his breakfast leisurely. He saw an auntie walking into the alley with her leather shoes. Mao wiped his mouth and said to Zheng Tan, who was playing with ants with his tail, "Let's go." The person in the house dressed neatly and walked out of the door. His hair was neatly combed and even had some hair gel. When he came out with his briefcase, he happened to see the auntie from the neighborhood committee walking towards him with an unfriendly expression. The person was confused. The last time he saw this auntie, it was because the water plant had stopped for a day. What was going on this time? No matter what he was thinking, the person still showed his signature smile. He was about to say good morning, but before he could say good morning, the auntie in front of him sprayed saliva all over his face. Oh, how sinful! How could you bear to do such a thing? You really know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. You are really morally corrupt, seriously affecting the city's appearance. Zheng Tan and Mao hid not far away and watched as the auntie scolded the person. Of course, since she was a person with a job, the auntie scolded in a more elegant manner. She didn't use any vulgar words, but her words ranged from mental health to social harmony, from harm to cats to threats to the country and the people. She didn't stop talking for 10 minutes. Sometimes, these auntie were quite cute, Zheng Tan thought to himself. After the auntie, a few more people came. They looked like reporters, but as for which newspaper they were from, Zheng Tan didn't know. The person seemed to be very impatient. He looked at his watch, pushed away the people blocking him, and left in a hurry. Seeing that Mao didn't plan to leave, Zheng Tan continued to stay there and watch. Soon, some people gathered around the house. Because there were a few auntie blocking the way, some young people couldn't just barge in, so they simply waited around. Some of the neighbors who lived around didn't understand what was going on. After inquiring about it with a gossipy attitude, they were shocked. They had children in their homes. No one could say for sure if such a person who abused cats would abuse children in the same way. Everyone lived so close to each other, and just thinking about it made them feel cold. He moved here 2 years ago. The original owner sold the house to him, but we don't know him well. We usually don't talk to him. Several other residents around quickly cleared their names, saying that the people who lived here were very good people, different from the cat abuser. More and more people came over, and a large part of them were groups that loved cats. This alley, which was not wide to begin with, was full of people, including reporters. Of course, some people came purely to join in the fun. At the other end of the alley, a police car was parked. 2 people in police uniforms were standing by the car door. They had just received a call saying that there was an illegal gathering here. But looking at the situation now, after understanding the reason, it seemed that the situation was a bit complicated. The policeman near the car door sighed and said, "You stay here first. I'll go buy a pack of cigarettes. I want to go to the toilet." The other person rolled his eyes. "My mother-in-law is there. She loves cats. Don't you see that she's filled with righteous indignation now? I'm not very good with words. If I make her unhappy, the situation will be more serious. Brother, please help me. Let your wife come over and take her back." "Forget it. My wife likes cats more. With her temper, she'll probably make me kill the cat abuser. Chapter 170. The two policemen still couldn't avoid it because there was a conflict over there, and they had to go over to mediate. The cause was that a passerby said, "It's just a cat. It's okay to kill it." It directly led to a quarrel. If the two policemen didn't go over, that person would probably be beaten up. As for the reporters who were mixed in, they were busy taking photos. Even if they couldn't block the person in the house today, they would have something to report. An old man who lived nearby walked out of the alley with his hands clasped behind his back. He shook his head and said in a low voice, "Should I say that person is brainless or that he doesn't know how to adapt to the situation? He doesn't know how to look at the situation. Even if he wanted to say something, he could only say it in peace." He didn't even look at the people around him. When it was almost noon, Zhang Tan didn't continue to stare there. He went back to eat and came out in the afternoon to take a look. After going back, Zhang Tan analyzed it. He guessed that Mao might have known the password of the computer through the monitor. After copying the cat abuse video file, it went back to dismantle the monitor in the house. That was why Mao was so fearless. It wasn't afraid of the reporters and other relevant personnel going in to check. At the same time, it also used some means to use the media and the internet to induce public opinion, so that things would develop like this in a short time. The screenshot on the post came from the video on the person's computer. In the past 2 days, the person hadn't looked for another cat. Every once in a while, he would catch one to vent his anger. As for the time interval, it could be a few days, 2 or 3 weeks, or even a few months. It depended on how long it would take for the resentment and anger in his heart to accumulate to the point of eruption. The person didn't come back for a whole day, but there was more detailed information about the person on the internet, as well as several clear photos from multiple angles. Every day, people went to the house to smash eggs, splash paint, and put up slogans, but no one knew what the purpose of those people was. Maybe they were really angry about it, or maybe some people wanted to take the opportunity to make a fuss. Soon, the news about the person's cat abuse was reported by major newspapers such as the Chuqing Evening News, Chuqing Metropolis Daily, and the Provincial Daily. There were even some more authoritative psychologists' analysis and comments. At the same time, many people used this matter to show their presence, or to gain fame and fortune to improve their reputation. It didn't matter if those people were acting or if they really loved cats and criticized cat abuse, as long as what they did satisfied Zhang Tan and Mao. No matter what profession one was in, whether male or female, old or young, there would always be people who loved cats. As long as this matter was known by the public, that person would not be able to continue to stay in Chuhua City peacefully, at least in the short term. Apparently, that person had already been beaten up by an unknown cat lover. On the other hand, the heated discussion caused by this incident did not cool down. Instead, it was becoming more and more intense. Many people felt that this was too sudden and inconceivable. Everything had to be done step by step, right? Why did this matter suddenly become the focus of attention? From their point of view, this matter seemed to be making a mountain out of a molehill. Wasn't this just abusing a cat? What was there to hype about? Cat abuse had happened before, but why wasn't it as sensational as this time? What was the reason? In addition to Mao, there were of course other factors. If it was just a single incident, this topic would not have suddenly heated up so quickly. However, not long ago, there was a top student who abused cats. At that time, there was an expert who said that this was just a very rare phenomenon in society, and that everyone did not have to hold on to it. But in the end, only a few days after that incident, there was another cat abusing white-collar workers. That expert's face was suddenly slapped hard. Moreover, these two cat abuse incidents were so close to each other. As the saying goes, one wave after another, so the condemnation was even more intense. The anger of the cat friends was underestimated by many people, just like how there were people who violently protected cats in the beginning. Many people proposed that relevant animal protection laws should be enacted quickly. They could not let these people continue to be so rampant. The second factor was what Mao said. Killing cats was different from abusing cats. It mainly referred to the different reactions of society. Killing cats and dogs was indifferent to many people. It was just like killing chickens and sheep. There was nothing to argue about. Even if wild animals or even protected wild animals were killed, the punishment was the same. Except for some people, the reaction of the main body of society would not be very big, especially for the ordinary people who had to work hard for their lives all the time. At most, it was a topic that could be discussed after dinner. Even if a level 1 protected animal was killed, most people would just respond with an indifferent, "Oh." However, torturing and killing was different. Moreover, when the public opinion gradually pushed the topic in another direction, causing people's focus to not be on the cat but on the human, people would not just let out a flat, "Oh," nor would it be just a moral condemnation. Instead, they would have to take precautions against the problem before it happened. What? Was it possible for people who were inclined to abuse cats to abuse children? Didn't that mean that they would abuse people in the future? They were simply beasts. No, they were worse than beasts. People would not allow such people to exist around them. Even if they were suspected of abusing cats or dogs, they would be highly guarded against. Even when interacting with parents in an educational program on the provincial television station, someone had mentioned it. Who would allow their children to grow up in such a dangerous environment? That top student should be glad that there was someone to share his pressure and the scolding of people at this time. During this period of time, Zheng Tan often heard people discussing who was more suspicious around them, especially those who kicked animals for no reason. They were the focus of people's observation. Even the car owner, who had been sprayed with cat urine by a Huang, only took a few deep breaths to calm his anger. He resisted the urge to kick the cat away, and then drove away. He didn't even curse. It was a sensitive period in public, so he'd better hold it in for now. Otherwise, if he yelled and others didn't see the cat peeing, they would only see him scolding the cat and kicking the cat. There was no need to wait until tomorrow. Those aunties who went out tonight would let him know why cat urine was so smelly. Looking at Huang, who was standing on the tree trunk and sharpening its claws without knowing anything, Zheng Tan yawned and prepared to find a place to sleep. Recently, he had been thinking too much, and he had spent too much time online during the day. Cats had more time to sleep. Zheng Tan moved his claws and counted. Indeed, he didn't have enough sleep. He was preparing to go back to the courtyard to find a tree, but Zheng Tan was stopped by Air Mao. "Black Coal, are you going out tonight?" Air Mao asked as he walked out of the school gate. Zheng Tan looked at Air Mao. What was this guy up to now? Air Mao smiled maliciously. "I'll see you at the side door behind the eastern courtyard at 8 o'clock in the evening. If I don't see you by then, I won't wait." Tonight? Zheng Tan had a vague feeling that it was about the cat abuser. These days, Air Mao was only using the media and public opinion to achieve a certain goal. Zheng Tan had always felt that there was more to it. No matter what, he could only wait until tonight to find out the answer. Jiao family 3 would be there at night. Zheng Tan wasn't worried that little Pomelo would be unsafe at home alone. He also didn't have to worry about going out. When the hand on the wall clock in the Jiao family's living room pointed to 7:40, Zheng Tan ran out. It took him less than 10 minutes to reach the side door. Zheng Tan squatted by the sidewalk without flower beds and watched the cars coming and going. Not far away, some people got off the bus at the bus stop. When they saw Zheng Tan, they wanted to tease him, but they were scared away by Zheng Tan's baring of his teeth. Today, Zheng Tan didn't want to be entangled with these people. An ordinary-looking family car stopped and rolled down the window. After seeing that it was Air Mao, Zheng Tan jumped in through the open window of the passenger seat. As soon as Zheng Tan entered, he smelled a familiar scent. There was the cat abusers and the tabby cats. He didn't see the cat, only the tabby cat squatting in the back seat. Zheng Tan looked at Air Mao in confusion. Air Mao curled its lips. "I drove past there and saw it squatting by the roadside. I called out. Then it became like this. When it got into the car, it was still sniffing around. It was sniffing and growling. Black Coal, do you think it knows that we're going to fix that guy?" Zheng Tan looked at the tabby cat squatting in the back seat with its head down and eyes closed as if it was taking a nap. He really didn't understand what it was trying to do. Without saying anything about the tabby cat, Air Mao drove away. Air Mao's driving was similar to Celestine's. With the radio on in the car, it couldn't stop talking. That guy was in the trunk. He even changed the car. Looks like there were a lot of people who went to chat with him. When I found him, his head was still wrapped in gauze. So it went to kidnap someone. Zheng Tan thought to himself. As expected, there was a backup plan. The car drove out of the third ring road until it reached the suburbs. There were basically no tall buildings in sight before the car stopped. After Zheng Tan looked at the outside environment, his first thought was, Mao, this guy, is planning to kill someone and abandon the body? Be good, don't run around. If you run away, I won't care about you, Mao said as it got out of the car. Zheng Tan didn't think that it was talking to him. The tabby cat in the back seat raised its head and looked outside. Then, it opened its mouth slightly and let out a lazy meow. It even had the sound that came from its nasal cavity when it had just woken up. It didn't jump out of the car even when the car window was opened. Zheng Tan jumped out of the car and looked around. At this time, the surrounding weeds hadn't grown yet. There were only short clumps of grass. There were sporadic lights in the distance. Because the moon was close to a circle, the moonlight was good. The surroundings didn't seem very dark. It was hazy. Mao dragged the person out of the trunk. Looking at the series of movements, it didn't seem like a rookie. It must have done this many times. The person's hands were tied behind his back. His legs were also tied tightly. His mouth was sealed and his eyes were covered with a layer of cloth. He looked a little drowsy and wasn't conscious. This was all Mao's masterpiece. After dragging the person out, Mao put him down about 10 meters away from the car. Mao walked back to the car and pulled out a stick from the car. It said to Zheng Tan, "Tell me, how should we fight?" Zheng Tan didn't look at Mao. He saw the tabby cat looking out of the car window. It didn't have the slightest bit of laziness like before. It seemed to be confirming the person's identity. Then the tabby cat let out a meow. It jumped out of the car and walked towards the person. Seeing the tabby cat's movements, Mao didn't say anything. It turned the stick in its hand and stared in that direction. The tabby cat didn't walk very fast. Its ears were pulled back and its whiskers were slightly raised. It let out a meow sound. Zheng Tan could hear that it was different from a pure warning. It already had a strong intention to attack. At this time, the person had already started to wake up. He kicked his legs and rolled left and right. The night wind blew. The friction between leaves and grass made a slight rustling sound. Chapter 171. The person who was slowly waking up didn't understand his current situation, but there was an inexplicable sense of fear. A human? No, it wasn't. Just now, he vaguely heard a human voice, but at the same time, he also heard a cat's meow. He moved his legs, as if he wanted to remove the rope tied to his ankles, but there was another meow, which made his scalp tingle. He knew this cat. He was too familiar with this meow. Because of this meow, he had nightmares for a long time. Even watching cat abuse videos and killing cats with his own hands couldn't erase this fear. On the contrary, it had a tendency to become more and more intense. It was the tabby cat that he had almost killed, but it had escaped in the end. Why was it always haunting him? He regretted it, really regretted it. Why did he choose this cat when he bought it from the cat trafficker? Perhaps it was because this cat's eyes were the most unruly and fierce? It gave him the most pleasure to kill? Woo! There was another meow. Hearing this kind of meow, even people who didn't know much about cats could hear some warning and aggression from it. After hearing this meow, Zheng Tan pressed his ears back. He felt that something was wrong. Generally, the warning meow would start low, then rise and fall at the end. But this tabby cat's voice at the moment sounded different from this one. There seemed to be some other tones in it. Maybe there wasn't much difference in the way ordinary people heard it, but from the perspective of a cat, Zheng Tan distinguished it with a cat's hearing. He felt that this meow had a kind of calling for the same kind. It was like you didn't understand the language, but you could hear kindness or malice in other people's tone. Cat meows were actually very complicated. Although they weren't as rich and varied as human languages, Zheng Tan had heard hundreds of them since he became a cat. Maybe every cat had its own way of expressing itself, or maybe different ways of expressing the same meaning, but no one could say for sure. Even Zheng Tan could only roughly guess the possible meaning from these meows, but he couldn't delve into it. Many voices sounded the same to people, but in fact, The emotions they express were very different. Zheng Tan was thinking when a meow came from not far away. He didn't know whose cat it was that came out for a walk at night. Meow. The multicolored cat meowed again and again. Soon, a few more meows could be heard from afar. They belonged to different cats. He didn't need to fully understand it, but he could roughly guess its meaning when he heard it for the first time. TSK. Are these cats starting to flirt? Air Mao poked Zheng Tan, who was standing on the roof of the car. People's first reaction to a cat's loud roar was that the cat was making waves again. Little did they know that the cat's roar had other meanings, and this kind of roar was completely different from the previous kind. Zheng Tan saw that more and more cats were responding to his call. He thought, where is the skill of this kind of call? He didn't know if the multicolored cat had figured out the call itself, or if it had learned it from another cat. In short, this kind of sound resonated with the cats, as if the most primitive consciousness hidden in their blood had been awakened, making them excited and gathering towards the source of the sound. Zheng Tan suddenly experienced the scene on TV where a wolf stood on a high ground and howled under the full moon, and then a pack of wolves howled with it. In the grass that wasn't very tall and in the fields where crops were planted, the whooshing sound came one after another. It was different from the sound of leaves rubbing against each other in the night wind. It wasn't difficult to distinguish it in such a quiet night. It was the sound of cats running in the grass. From Air Mao's angle, under the moonlight, it could clearly see that the grass and crops that were close to half a meter high were swaying because of the animals running inside. The animals were running in this direction. Big cats like tiger, leopard, lion, and so on had a domineering roar, but the roar of cats was different. It sounded scary. Air Mao took out a cigarette and lit it. He took a deep breath and suppressed the feeling of fear in his heart. The flame of the cigarette flickered with the night wind. Air Mao leaned against the car and looked around. More and more cats were meowing in agreement. Was this a chorus? Zheng Tan, who was standing on the roof of the car, was gradually getting excited. Air Mao couldn't feel it, but Zheng Tan suddenly had an impulse to howl. Looking up at the bright moon hanging in the sky, Zheng Tan took a deep breath. Awooh. The group of cats stopped meowing abruptly. It was like when everyone was singing, and suddenly there was a fart sound. The incongruity of the sound directly destroyed the artistic conception in front of them. In the grass, the cats froze in place. In the places where the grass was shorter and sparser, one could see the pointed ears of the cats moving, as if they were trying to figure out where the sudden howl came from. A few cats that were too sensitive to their surroundings jumped up like fleas. The grass that was close to half a meter high couldn't hide their arched bodies. Zheng Tan, who had just taken a puff of the cigarette, was shocked by the sudden howl. He almost coughed and fell to the ground. This was the first time he heard Zheng Tan howl. Before this, he had only heard a little from Celestine, but he didn't think that it would have such a big impact on his hearing. The tabby cat pulled its ears and looked at Zheng Tan, then turned back and continued to howl at the people who were frantically kicking their legs on the ground. Zheng Tan understood the general meaning of the tabby cat's glance. F***ck, I'm being despised. The depressed Zheng Tan sharpened his claws on the roof of the car, leaving a few claw marks on the roof. He had been a cat for almost 2 years, but he still didn't pass. It wasn't easy to be a cat. Fortunately, the cats didn't have any other thoughts. After a pause, they continued to gather in the middle under the lead of the tabby cat. Air Mao, who had recovered, threw away the cigarette butt and put it out with the tip of his foot. He said to Zheng Tan, "Give up. Even ghosts will be scared away by your howl. Let's not howl. Let them howl. You just squat at the side and watch. If they can't solve it, you can go over." Air Mao glanced at the large grass in the distance and shook off the goosebumps on his body. The scene was indeed strange. There were already more than 10 cats. It seemed that more cats would come over after hearing the noise. Cats were hard to understand. For safety reasons, Air Mao opened the car door and got in. It seemed that he didn't need to do anything here. These cats didn't look very friendly. Air Mao always felt that cats were like a combination of demons and angels. When they lazily lay down and basked in the sun, or squinted their eyes and rubbed against you, they were indeed cute and obedient. Their whole body and squinted eyes seemed to make the pace of time become leisurely, making people feel that the whole world was warm. But on the other hand, They always made people gnash their teeth. Maybe gnashing their teeth was better. Just like right now, those pairs of eyes in the dark revealed an unruly wildness, as if they were looking for and waiting for the next prey at any time. There was no doubt that they would pop out their sharp claws and point at you in the next moment. Zheng Tan lay on the roof of the car and looked at the cats gathering around. Under the lead of the tabby cat, they pounced on the struggling man on the ground. The man's mouth was sealed, so he couldn't make a sound. Zheng Tan knew from the snort that this man was really scared, extremely scared. Compared to the many pure pet cats in the city center, the cats in the suburbs were generally more wild. They played in the fields and wild grass every day and fought with other small animals in the countryside. How could cats be obedient? There were also some wild cats, and when they were fierce, there was nothing to say. Some relatively timid cats walked around the periphery, and under the lead of other cats, they occasionally looked for an opportunity to scratch the man with their claws. The bolder and more aggressive cats followed the tabby cat and pounced on the man. There were always some cats that were like the sheriff. The more they were defeated, the braver they became. After being kicked out, they got up and continued to pounce on the man, biting and scratching. Mao rubbed his goosebumps in the car. He rolled up the car window a little more, afraid that the cats would rush over. After all, these cats weren't trained, and most of them were house cats. They didn't know where the vital parts were, and their attacking power was limited. Maybe some of them just thought this was a game, just like how they played with their cat toys. The man on the ground deliberately curled himself up. It didn't matter if he was injured, but the most important thing was to protect his own life. The tabby cat and a more aggressive wild cat were also the ones who bit more fiercely. Mao looked at the time and the battle situation over there. He didn't want this man to die here, so he had to keep an eye on him. As for Zheng Tan, he was learning how to distinguish which of the tabby cat's cries was the cause of the current situation, which could affect the cat's emotions, and how to mobilize the cat's emotions. Cats weren't considered social animals nowadays, but they weren't absolutely solitary either. After all, they had infiltrated human society, and there were so many cat owners around. Every day when he went out, he would meet many cats, and most of them lived in peace. If he gathered all the cats in Tsinghua University, what would the situation be like? He was a little excited just thinking about it. However, this wasn't an easy skill. Maybe Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to learn it by the end of his life as a cat. As an alien with a cat's body and a human's heart, compared to a real cat, Zheng Tan encountered more obstacles. However, as long as he was good at learning and understanding, Zheng Tan believed that he still had a chance. When Mao called for it to stop, the tabby cat was already stained with a lot of blood. When it heard Mao's call, it responded reluctantly, but in the end, it still retreated and walked to the side of the car to lick its fur. Without the tabby cat, the other cats gradually stopped and spread around to lick their paws. The wild cat saw Mao walk over and ran away, probably thinking that this person wasn't easy to deal with. The clothes and pants of the person on the ground were blood-stained rags, and his hands and face were covered with blood from scratches. He curled up there and didn't move. Only the slight rise and fall of his body showed that he was still alive. The urine and blood on the ground mixed together into a puddle. Although the tabby cat was very fierce, it was quite obedient to Mao. After getting into the car, it returned to its previous docile state. If it wasn't for the blood stains on its body, its docile appearance would have been more convincing. Mao stuffed the person, who was covered in blood, into the trunk. Mao said that he would take care of the rest, and that he would make sure that Zheng Tan and the tabby cat would never see the person again. However, it didn't seem like it was going to kill him. When the car drove back to the side door of the east courtyard of Tsinghua University, Zheng Tan got out of the car to go home. The tabby cat was still squatting in the back seat with its eyes closed, and it didn't seem like it was going to get out of the car at all. Mao tried to chase it away, but it didn't work, so it just let it be. Chapter 172. The tabby cat was staying in the east courtyard. When Zheng Tan sent little Pomelo to school early in the morning, he saw the cat squatting by the flower bed, facing Building B. Yesterday, the cat followed Mao to deal with the aftermath. When it came back with Mao, it was probably rejected by Mao, so it changed its strategy and squatted in front of the building to block people. Just like Li Yuanba looking for an owner, this cat probably had a similar plan. It would go to whoever it liked. When it saw Zheng Tan and little Pomelo, the cat only half opened its eyes to take a look, then closed its eyes and continued to sleep. Its ears were pricked up, and when it heard the door creak, it opened its eyes and looked over. Although he didn't know why the cat was so attached to Air Mao, Zheng Tan felt that it would be difficult for Air Mao to adopt a cat. When Air Mao saw Zheng Tan and the others squatting in the tree, it said, "Cats are a bunch of idiots." It was obvious that this person had a deep opinion of cats. There was no sunshine today, and it was gloomy. Zheng Tan couldn't stay in one place to bask in the sun, so he went out for a walk. He wanted to play for a while, but it suddenly started to drizzle, so he quickly ran back. When he returned to the courtyard, he saw that the cat was still squatting in the same place, its ears shaking because of the raindrops. Yesterday, the weather forecast said that today would be a cloudy day, and there would only be light rain tomorrow, but it started to rain now. Sure enough, the weather forecast could only be read in real time. Looking at the sky, the rain was unavoidable. If it rained, Zheng Tan didn't need to pick up little Pomelo at noon. He could just wait at home for lunch. He used to do that when it rained. When he climbed to the third floor, Zheng Tan listened at Air Mao's door. There were voices inside, probably on the phone. If this guy had already woken up, he would have gone out to buy breakfast. It was impossible that he didn't know that the tabby cat was squatting outside. Forget it. Whether to adopt or not was Air Mao's own business. Zheng Tan couldn't help him make the decision. Zheng Tan couldn't help that tabby cat. That tabby cat had its eyes on this guy. After returning home, Zheng Tan did not turn on the computer to surf the internet. Instead, he leaned against the bedroom door and looked at the rain that was getting heavier and heavier. Zheng Tan looked over and saw that the B*TCH bird was stretching its beak out of the iron net to drink rainwater. It wasn't because it was thirsty. According to Zheng Tan's understanding of it, the bird was just having fun. After a winter, Zheng Tan felt that the bird's personality had become even worse. Not only did it sing old songs, but it would also occasionally recite a few lines of poetry in a very emotional manner. It was said that its owner had taken it to Hope Primary School to learn this from the children there. Another thing that gave Zheng Tan a headache was that this bird seemed to have learned how to scold people. He didn't know who it had learned it from. It could only be said that this bird's comprehension was too strong. Zheng Tan leaned against the door and looked at the balcony that had been soaked by the rain. When the parrot wasn't paying attention, Zheng Tan poked his head out. He didn't find the cat in the flower bed below. It probably went to hide from the rain. In a place like Chuhua City, during this season, the temperature would rise every time it rained. When the rain stopped, they would wait for the temperature to rise again. Different from Zheng Tan's calmness, Air Mao seemed to be more irritated. It didn't want to listen to songs anymore. It took off its headphones and stared at the rain in a daze. The door to the balcony was open. The wind blew in with the humidity outside, making people feel a little cold. Air Mao lit a cigarette and smoked slowly. It was in a bad mood after making a phone call. Thinking about the tabby cat made it even more irritated. At this time, a slightly hoarse and rhythmic voice came from outside. Spring rain is as precious as oil, flowing all over the streets. Air Mao was speechless. F***CK, which lunatic was reciting poetry. Air Mao was too lazy to go out and see who it was. After smoking half of the cigarette, it threw it into the ashtray and went out with a foldable umbrella. Zheng Tan leaned against the window and looked at the rain. Suddenly, he heard the door creak downstairs. He went to the balcony and stretched his neck to look. Although he couldn't see the head, Zheng Tan recognized the pants. Why did Air Mao go out? An hour later, the rain stopped. There were only a few drops of rain floating in the air. Many people didn't continue to hold their umbrellas. Zheng Tan looked at the cement path in front of the building. At this time, classes had ended. Zheng Tan was waiting for little Pomelo and Jiao Wei to bring food back. He didn't expect to see Air Mao first, and behind Air Mao was the tabby cat. The tabby cat was a little wet. There were some black mud stains on its forelegs, but it seemed to be in good spirits. Most importantly, when Air Mao went into the building, the cat followed him in. Was he going to raise it? Zheng Tan was curious. Air Mao brought the cat back. Didn't he not like cats? What a contradictory person. After Mao brought the cat back, he looked at the cat who was squatting on the ground and eating. He scratched his head in annoyance. Why did he bring it back? How to raise it? He didn't even take care of himself. How could he raise a cat? The cat would probably be listless after a few days. Alas, people hurt cats. It was all caused by impulse. The paper box was wet from the rain. The disposable paper box with leftovers was soaked in water. And the few fish bones on the ground were slowly washed down by the water flowing down the slope. Thinking back to the situation, Mao didn't know what he was thinking. When he saw the cat hiding in the wet paper box looking at him, he asked the cat to follow him. It was just a test. He thought that the cat would ignore him, but he didn't expect the cat to really follow him all the way here. The previous landlord didn't say that pets were not allowed. Besides, there were many pets in the courtyard, so there was no need to worry. Mao thought to himself. This cat wasn't as smart as the black cat upstairs. It was too smart to make people feel uncomfortable. At the same time, this cat wasn't too stupid. It could make people less worried. Thinking about it this way, it wasn't bad. Anyway, he was bored now. He would raise the cat first. This cat was probably just on a whim. When it wanted to leave, he would open the door and let it go. For the time being, just let it be. Since he had decided to raise it, Mao still had a lot of problems to face. Looking at the stains on the cat, Mao frowned. Unable to think of a good solution, Mao decided to go upstairs and ask the family on the 5th floor how they usually raised cats. At this time, the girl and the student named Jiao Wei should be there. When Mao came, Zheng Tan was eating. When he asked about the cat food, Jiao Wei didn't know much. It was little Pomelo who answered. She didn't say much, just one sentence, but it was simple and clear. She directly solved Mao's question. Little Pomelo suggested that Mao make a trip to Ming So Pet Center. There were specialized instructors and all kinds of related products for sale. They could also help bathe the pets. After getting the solution, Mao immediately took the cat, which had just eaten its fill, to Xiaoguo's place. When they arrived, Mao realized that there were more things to do than he had thought. Mao didn't know anything about vaccines, deworming and so on, so he left it all to the veterinarians and staff. He just had to pay. A staff member was taking down the registration book. Name: Wang Ming. Mao played with his phone in boredom and didn't look up. The girl in charge of the registration looked at Mao strangely. Your cat has a surname? Huh? Are you asking for the cat's name? Of course. Sir, didn't you already sign your name just now? The cat's name. Mao was silent for 2 seconds. Thinking of the black pattern on the cat's nose, he said, Black Rice. Its name is Black Rice. How old is it? The girl asked again. I don't know. I just adopted it today. Mao shrugged. The girl in charge of the registration showed 2 dimples. Sir, you are so caring. Mao. Hee. It was the first time someone had said that he was caring. Why did it feel so awkward? The girl was very enthusiastic. Of course, while answering Mao's questions, she didn't forget to promote her pet center's products, such as cat climbing frames, cat scratching boards, cat toys, cat food and so on. Mao took the book from the girl and flipped through it. After he liked it, he would look at the real thing later. The rented space was only so big, so he didn't need to buy too many things. It was as simple as possible. However, he had to buy cat food. That way, he wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. He couldn't make cat food in the kitchen. As he flipped through the book, Mao suddenly paused on a certain page of the cat food introduction. He seemed unsure, so he took a closer look and then looked at a line of small words next to it. Blacksea. The girl started to introduce it with a smile. This is our pet center's star cat. Our boss paid a lot of money to hire it as a cat model. It has appeared in many pet magazines. Oh, it's also in some online forums. It also has a lot of BC fans. BC fans? Cat model. Bah, do you think I can't recognize it just because it has a high-end English name? This is obviously the cat upstairs. Although Mao always said that he hated cats, his ability to recognize cats was not bad. Even if he wasn't sure at first glance, after looking at the pictures, Mao had already equated the cat in the picture with the cat upstairs. Airmao curled his lips and flipped through a few more pages. He found that the cat food in the advertisement pictures was more than twice as expensive as the other categories. Some were even flipped several times. This amount of money was nothing to Airmao, but Airmao was puzzled. Why were the advertisements for this black cat so expensive? Airmao pointed at the serious face of the black cat in the advertisement picture and asked the girl about his doubts. The young lady answered in a professional manner, "Because these categories are all of high quality, and they will soon be exported abroad." Export? Don't be kidding. Airmao didn't believe her at all. However, looking at the price of the cat food with the image of Black Sea, Airmao touched his chin. It seemed that this cat was very valuable. "Can you deliver the goods here?" "We can deliver large items or items that reach a certain price. Our pet center's service will definitely make you rest assured." She had directly changed to you. Airmao wasn't short of money anyway. He picked a few cat foods that were advertised by the cat upstairs, as well as cat nests and cat scratching boards that he liked. "Are these okay?" "Yes." The girl's smile widened. If they were successful, there would be no commission, but there would be bonus points. Every month, there would be a bonus. "Don't you need to try it?" the girl asked. "No, if my cat doesn't want to eat it, I'll throw it to Black Sea and let it eat it all in front of me." Airmao snorted. How could it not eat the advertisement made by that cat? The girl only thought that Airmao was joking. She asked a few questions and filled out a list for Airmao to check. She handed it to the person who picked up the goods and continued to register the next customer. Chapter 173. Airmao asked the pet center to do a comprehensive examination of the cat. The cat was in good condition. The veterinarian estimated the cat's age. To Airmao's surprise, the cat was less than 1 year old. "By the way, Mr. Wang, do you want to sterilize your cat?" the girl asked. She also told Airmao about the benefits of sterilization in the city. "Sterilization? I need to cut off its penis?" Airmao was texting on his phone and didn't even raise his head. The little girl hesitated for a moment before saying, "Your cat is female." "Female?" Airmao was shocked. What the F***ck? How could a female be so tough? Do cats and dogs have different ways of identifying male and female? Airmao remembered that dogs were easy to identify. The girl smiled. Obviously, she had seen a lot of customers like Airmao. She took out a thin booklet from a cabinet and handed it to Airmao. There was some basic information about cats in the booklet. Airmao flipped through it and asked, "How much is this booklet?" "This is printed by our pet center. I'll give it to you." "That's more like it." Airmao threw the booklet into a plastic bag. In the end, Airmao didn't ask for surgery. He took the clean cat back to the pet center. The pet center sent the items to the address Airmao filled in. Airmao felt that the room was a little smaller when the cat's items were placed on the table. Luckily, they were all small items. Otherwise, it would be really crowded. Airmao poured some cat food into the cat's bowl. The cat that was sniffing in its new nest walked over. Airmao was a little disappointed. The cat didn't seem to be picky about food. It was eating happily. It seemed that he couldn't trouble the cat upstairs for the time being. Airmao didn't care about the cat anymore. He opened the laptop he bought not long ago and logged into the pet website. The ID, "All the good names have been named by cats," was registered 3 years ago. At that time, he and his fellow apprentices went to the pet forum under the influence of their master's cat. They wanted to see if other people's cats were the same as their master's cat. At that time, the ID was shared by several people. Now it was Airmao's alone. The others didn't pay attention to the forum anymore. Even Airmao only remembered to log in because of what happened a while ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used this ID. Nowadays, the internet in the country was developing rapidly. Even the forums had changed a lot in the past few years. Some people even shared some video links. Airmao searched for the pictures and videos of the guy upstairs. Just as the girl in the pet center said, there were a few popular posts about cat food. Most of them were about the black cat, and many of the people who replied below were also about the black cat. They were the BC fans that the girl mentioned. Looking at the cat in the picture carefully, Airmao still attributed the effect in the picture and the video to the magic of photography. Otherwise, How could a native cat be shot into the ever-changing cat in the picture and video? After all, cats were not humans. How could they have any acting skills? Mao would never believe it. It was estimated that the little girl in the pet center didn't know the true identity of Black Sea. Otherwise she wouldn't have praised it so much. After all, there was a big difference between an advertisement and the real thing. The next day, the weather was sunny. After the rain, the temperature rose quickly. The tabby cat was lying on the balcony, basking in the sun. Mao was bored and tried the comb that was given when it bought the cat body wash. According to the booklet, combing a cat's fur could not only remove the fur that had fallen off, but also prevent the cat from swallowing the fur into its stomach and getting hairball disease. It could also maintain the beauty of the cat's fur, promote the skin's blood circulation, and improve the relationship between cat and human. Since Mao had nothing to do, it moved a small stool to sit next to the cat, and combed its fur according to the instructions in the booklet. After a few tries, it became familiar with the movements. Seeing the tabby cat squint its eyes, Mao suddenly felt a sense of accomplishment. Look, cats aren't that difficult to raise. Why did some people talk about raising cats as if they had eaten strange flavored beans? While Mao was feeling proud, suddenly bang! The sound of something hitting the iron fence came from above. The tabby cat, who was lying on the ground and basking in the sun, suddenly stood up and looked in that direction. Its wandering days had made it used to being highly alert. Mao also stopped combing its fur and looked over. Inside the iron fence, a blue parrot hooked its big claws on the iron fence and looked at the man and the cat on the third floor with its yellow eyes. General's attention was mainly on the tabby cat. It didn't know this cat because it had never seen it before. When did this strange cat come? Well, its mouth was itchy. Maybe it felt that the parrot was not a friendly signal. So the tabby cat covered its ears and looked at the parrot on the fourth floor vigilantly. Mao didn't think much of it. Cats and birds were not easy to get along. His master's cat went to the forest every day to catch birds of all sizes. However, it was rare to see this kind of parrot in China. No wonder the balcony on the fourth floor was surrounded by iron fences. Looking at the parrot on the fourth floor, Mao said with a playful attitude, "Hey, parrot." The general on the other side of the fence quickly replied with standard American pronunciation and some dialect words, "Hello, idiot." Mao was speechless. Who taught this King parrot? On the balcony on the fifth floor, Zheng Tan was rolling on the ground with laughter as he listened to the conversation below. General was definitely not friendly after seeing the tabby cat, so it attacked Mao in this way. Zheng Tan and his friends lived on the second floor of Mao's building, so they couldn't see what was going on there. However, he could guess the general situation from the conversation between Mao and General, and the growling of the tabby cat. Fortunately, the people living in this building had a high tolerance for this kind of thing. Otherwise, there would be trouble in the future. However, with Mao and his friends on the third floor attracting General's attention, the bird wouldn't bother Zheng Tan often. Zheng Tan was very happy about this. Just as he was about to listen to the quarrel below, there was a rhythmic honk from the yard downstairs. Zheng Tan looked downstairs in confusion. Today was not the weekend. Why would Third Master Fang come here? Although he was confused, Zheng Tan still ran downstairs to unlock the door. Fang Xiaokong came in with Tongqing. Since the cat cart was dragged home, every time Fang Xiaokong took Zheng Tan out, Tongqing would come up to help move the cart. Although the cart was small, it wasn't light. Besides, it had to be moved to the fifth floor. Tongqing couldn't bear to see his boss do it himself. "I happen to have some time today. I have an appointment with old Lu to discuss something. I have to go on a business trip this weekend, so today is the day. I've already told your cat mom that I'll send you back tonight," Fang Xiaokong said as he asked Tongqing to move the two carts out of the room. Every once in a while, Fang Xiaokong would take Zheng Tan to old Lu to discuss business. Just as some people said, communication also relied on tricks. However, there were very few people like Fang Xiaokong who used cats to communicate, but old Lu liked this trick. No, it should be said that old Lu's baby son liked this trick. On the third floor, after Mao heard the parrot call him, "idiot," he was about to scold it back, but he remembered that this was Tsinghua University's staff dormitory, so he didn't say anything. He was going to buy a water gun and shoot it whenever the parrot scolded it. Air Mao rolled the combed cat fur into a ball. In fact, it wasn't much. Air Mao was going to throw it downstairs, but after thinking about it, he felt that he should be more polite and throw the cat fur into the trash can. Seeing that the trash in the bin was almost done, Air Mao lifted the trash bag and tied a knot. He opened the door and put it outside the door. He would bring it downstairs when he went downstairs. Once the temperature rose, the trash would be easy to smell. Air Mao had a cat at home, and he had heard a lot about cats going through trash cans. Who knew that when he opened the door, he would see Jung Tan, who happened to be on the 3rd floor. Yo, superstar. Glancing at the person on the stairs, Air Mao's face stiffened. He held back the mocking words he was about to say, and quickly went back into the room and closed the door. Feng Xiaokong stopped Jung Tan and gestured for Tong Qingxian to wait. Then he walked to Air Mao's door and knocked. Open the door, don't hide. I can see you. Feng Xiaokong said calmly. No time, I'm taking a dump. I'll give you 10 seconds to wipe your ass. 10, 9, 8. Feng Xiaokong looked at the watch on his wrist and counted the time seriously. He didn't care about Air Mao's lie at all. When he counted to 1, Air Mao scratched his head and helplessly opened the door. He cursed countless times in his heart for throwing the trash at this time. Uncle. Air Mao called out weakly and walked back into the room listlessly. Feng Xiaokong looked around the room, and then looked at Air Mao, who was lying on the chair. Who are you going to teach this time? Or do you have your eyes on a girl? You've misunderstood me. I've already turned over a new leaf. I know my place. I'm a good and upright young man, 3rd uncle. Air Mao hurriedly clarified. Jung Tan glanced at Air Mao from the corner of his eyes. Bullsh *T. This guy beat people up, picked locks, and almost killed people and abandoned their bodies. Feng Xiaokong looked at Air Mao without changing his expression. Turned over a new leaf? Yes, yes. Air Mao nodded. Turn over a new leaf? Yes, yes. Air Mao quickly promised. Know my place? Absolutely. An upright young man? Of course. I don't believe a word of it. Air Mao was speechless. His face was full of grief and indignation. However, I'm surprised that you chose this place to rent a house. It looks like you're ready to change. Of course, that's if you're not trying to flirt with female university students. I definitely don't have that intention. Feng Xiaokong looked around the house. Compared to where Air Mao used to live, this house was considered simple and crude. Moreover, Air Mao didn't look like a hooligan anymore. His clothes and appearance were much more decent. Turning over a new leaf is a good thing. Feng Xiaokong sighed meaningfully. He then left with Jung Tan. He didn't have time to talk nonsense with Air Mao. He couldn't control other people's children. At most, he could give them a few words of advice as an elder. Hey uncle. I won't complain to your parents. Your brother has been demoted and is busy with his political achievements. He's not in Chuhua City now. You can rest assured that no one will come and take you back. Air Mao sighed in relief. However, why was Uncle San so nice to that cat? Celestine didn't mention it much. After Jung Tan and Feng Xiaokong left, Air Mao sat on the chair and pondered. Black rice. Do you think I should walk it? Air Mao poked the tabby cat's nose. Meow. The tabby cat didn't understand Air Mao's words. He thought Air Mao was just playing with him. He tilted his head and rubbed against Air Mao's hand. Air Mao sighed. Forget it, let's do it the old way. He took out a $1 coin and placed it on the floor tiles. He flicked his finger, and the coin started to spin. Heads go, tails stay. Slap. The tabby cat looked as if he saw a toy. He slapped the coin with his paw and pressed it under his paw. Air Mao lifted his paw and looked at the coin on the floor tiles.